What is going on, everyone? Welcome to yet another Warski Live. Today we have a very interesting episode. We're calling it Identities in Western Civilization. And of course, here with me, as always, is JF. What's going on, JF?
I'm doing good, Andy. I'm very excited about today's subject. Today's subject is about a very important question.
You're going to be fucking abusing that the whole time, aren't you?
Yes, because our guest, Andy, is Luke.
I've actually, just for the audience to know, I've actually forced JF that every time he says in the public space that he has to use that. Isn't that right, JF?
Yes, every time I use the word in the public space, I will be using my echo effect. And before we move on to Luke, and I'm interested to talking to him because he's someone of the Jewish faith, but who has a very interesting career, and there's lots of things to talk about, including his involvement in gossips in the porn industry. Imagine, Andy, Luke is so autistic that he thought that the interesting thing in porn is gossiping about those who film it.
I'm too busy watching it to really gossip about it, but that's going to be a really interesting subject. But
But
actually,
before we move there, V is here.
yeah,
Well,
well, I got a Skype call from V before we started saying, "Hey, Andy, let me on for a bit," and I'm sure the audience is very happy that V is here after all those super
kick me.
chats yesterday. V was telling me, he goes, "Hey, Andy, that show you had yesterday, I could have." I could have finished that in a few sentences, and he wants to challenge JF on this. Is that right, V?
I don't want to challenge JF on this. I think it was just a misunderstanding. Basically, that guy was what? Archaeologist or
Yeah,
what was
archaeologist. Yeah.
right?
He was
Okay,
Portuguese.
that's Portuguese. But basically, I think he had a very rudimentary understanding of the subject he was talking about. And I can kind of understand why, because there is indeed a controversy in the scientific community right now. The same that you have with astrologists discussing if Pluto is a planet or not, right? So you have certain articles that are saying that the differences between the races aren't big enough to have their own classifications. And they're saying that, okay, if you look at dogs, for instance, the difference between, I don't know, German Shepherd and a Terrier is so colossal that is worthy of its own classification. It goes beyond bone structure, fur color. It's like a complete series of different behavioral patterns that are quite significant compared to the difference between a white man and a black man, right? And on the other hand, you have the different scientists who are saying that no, the differences, no matter how small, should have their own classifications.
The problem with this, V, and yeah, I agree with your description of it, and I agree with your metaphor with Pluto. The problem is that any scientist with IQ 140 or above does not engage in these kind of semantic debates because we all agree on reality and we all agree on the observations. No one denies that there's a mass out there that we call Pluto. And whether you categorize this as a planet is a matter of semantics. It's a matter of how you define planets. So yes, I agree. Your metaphor is correct, but entertaining this debate is ridiculous because we all agree that there are groups on Earth with characteristics, and that's the
Yeah,
definition of race by Google's definition.
yeah, I agree. There are differences between groups of people, right? So these differences are actually useful in medicine. For instance, it's important for me to know that black people have more testosterone than whites, because if a black person comes for a checkup and I notice he has more testosterone, I'm not going to think that's a problem with him, right? Another example is that black people have higher blood pressure than whites. So if a black person comes for a checkup and I notice that he has higher blood pressure, I'm not going to start giving him treatment because I know that for a black person that is normal. Again, like this is just semantics, as you said it before, and it is also like colloquialism when you say, "Yeah, this is a white person." In medicine, we do use ancestry, which because if you just say white person, it doesn't really tell me a lot about genetic predisposition to certain illnesses that he has. But if you say this is a Romanian, I know, okay, Romania is a country in Eastern Europe. He has more predispositions to tuberculosis. He has more predispositions to other diseases, like, for instance, how do you translate Gusha? This is what happens when I don't study the medical terms in English. But yeah, no, basically, like, if you know the exact geographic area, you know the diseases that he's going to be predispositioned more to than the whole region. However, for a police officer, if he says we have a black suspect, right? Everyone in that area knows to look for a black person. They don't need the exact, like, it's a black person from Texas. They don't need that additional information. So I guess it's up to the science branch that you want to apply this.
Oh, we have something new happening in the chat. Someone is not asking to kick V. He's saying kick V unironically. That's a first. Now, V,
actually,
do you recognize that outside of medicine, do you recognize that there are personal situations in which race can be relevant? For example, sexual preference. Is that legitimate to have sexual preferences for certain races?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. But,
I also just ask one thing, V. Do you believe race is real?
Yeah.
All right.
It's the different. Like, I am part with the scientists that use the idea of race as a definition now. But again, it's like the difference between colloquialism or the science that you're in, right? Again, like, I, as a medical doctor, it doesn't help me if you say white person. It narrows it down, but I need to be more specific than that.
Of course.
Like, for me as a doctor, if the person comes from Germany, or if the person is a white person coming from Africa, or he comes from Eastern Europe, that's a lot more information, and it helps me a lot more than just to say white.
But the JF had brought this up in the video with Maldi Buddha and last night, that there could possibly be hundreds of races, but for the purpose of keeping it simple, we have generalized it. For example, last night I was in an argument with Carlos saying, if I'm in the mall and I'm walking and I see an Asian person, I can be like, they are Asian. However, we can break it down to, are they from China or Korea? So there's, like, we're just keeping it more general to keep it more simple, right?
Well, for instance, when you're in the hospital, definitions matter a lot. I heard JF, and please tell me if this is correct, you said that definitions aren't that important?
Well, they're not important in science education. They can be important in communicating between professionals.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, if I will have a patient with a tumor that's in an emergency room, and a doctor tells me he's suffering from a T2N1 M0 stomach cancer, right? Immediately, I know what he's talking about. And in just 2 seconds, he described to me the condition that he is in. Whether, if you would actually have to explain the size of the tumor, the areas it's invading, and the metastasis and so forth, it would take a lot more time. So definitions are very important, because if a person would use a different definition, or they would have a different interpretation on that, you could see why that would lead to a false diagnosis.
I agree.
All right, so, I think we should move on from that. Any final thoughts on this, V, before we continue?
I think that this whole thing is... we need to be honest, right, about the scientific difference of opinions. Like, if for me a person says there are no races, but he can use the correct arguments and he can justify why he doesn't believe there are no races, that's a different thing than someone who will say, well, there's absolutely no differences between human beings. Because even the people in the science community who say there is no race, they do believe that there are genetic differences between ethnicities, and they do believe that things like IQ, for instance, could differentiate between different demographics.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much, V. Appreciate that, and we'll get you on a show in the future. The chat misses you, man.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. All right. Peace out. Right.
So to introduce, we also have another joining guest, who is Dorobe, who is on Twitter and who defines as an alt Jew. And so the two guests that we have today, Andy, are two people who are Jewish, but who are also very well aware of the current movements in the alt-right and very interested in it. And so first I would start with Luke. Luke, you've been talking to white nationalists. You've been talking to people who defined as red-pilled. What is your current feel on this community as you have been exploring it recently?
I feel that they're going to win, and that may be the very most important facet about the alt-right that most people don't realize, but they are going to win because I really don't think white people are going to commit suicide. If you as a white person have a commitment to I want my people to live, you're alt-right or very close to alt-right. If you boil the alt-right down, it simply means I want my people to live. And how could any self-respecting person not want their people to live? Now, there are going to be inevitably be conflicts of interest with other groups, including Jews, as whites, struggle to regain sovereignty over the countries that they created. But the bottom line is that the leading alt-right intellectuals have never been debated by anyone that can stand up to them. Kevin McDonald, Richard Spencer, Greg Johnson, F. Roger Devlin, Jared Taylor. These are intellectuals without peer. And it's fascinating that the establishment is way too afraid to debate them because they can't hold a candle to these guys. So I hope they're wrong about some things. But so far, all the evidence, as I understand it, points to them being correct, and they're heroic for wanting their people to live.
So, Andy, Luke has been reviewing the Sargon and Spencer debate, and he was very satisfied with Richard Spencer's performance. He even said, I really liked the work of JF, the co-host. And so I'm sorry, Andy, but now I have Jewish approval on my CV. I may one day leave the Warski Live show to go for the mainstream media.
I couldn't understand that one.
The mainstream media.
It's all blurry.
It's all blurry. It's the mainstream media. I was telling
media.
you that maybe one day with this on my CV, I'm going to get a job outside of Warski Live.
So JF CNN? Are we going to see?
CNN, whatever. So the Rebbe, do you share this view of the alt-right, or are you more opposed to the alt-right? Oh, we are not receiving your microphone, the Rebbe, so you might want to look at your configuration.
If you hit the settings, just real fast, the settings on the top of the call will have like a little wheel there. If you click that, you can check your microphone there.
Okay, this is going to take a couple minutes.
There it is. No, it works now.
There, we are hearing you now.
Okay, I'm on.
Yeah.
All right.
No, actually, I disagree with Mr. Ford on several fronts. One, I don't think the West, if I were to be a betting man, excuse me for one moment, I'm just going to have to step out for a second.
All right.
Sure, man, no worries.
So, Luke, just to understand better your position while the Rebbe configures this stuff, are you positive? Are you happy about this state of thing, the fact that the alt-right and that white nationalism may rise more than in the current position, or are you afraid of it?
Both. I want people to have self-respect, whether they're Jewish or not Jewish, and I cannot respect anyone who doesn't care about the future survival and prosperity of his people. So I respect the alt-right even when they make me unhappy or fearful, in the sense that I will listen to the Daily Shoah, and they will laugh for 15 minutes straight about, gassing the kikes and, throwing the Jews into Papa John ovens. And I'm not thrilled with that. So I think there are definitely threats to Jewish survival from the alt-right. But I respect people who want to live. Like, I respect an Arab and a Muslim who wants to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. Because, how could a self-respecting Arab or Muslim be content with this thriving Jewish state in his midst that has, substantial influence over American foreign policy? Now, an Arab or Muslim who will make peace with the Jewish state of Israel, they are pragmatically, better for me, but I don't respect them. Now, I can only respect an Arab or a Muslim who wants to destroy the Jewish state of Israel, because then he is standing up for his group's interest.
Well, that's very interesting.
Okay.
So,
hey, sorry. Hey, the Rebbe,
Can you hear me?
I have to put on some headphones because it's echoing really badly.
How about now?
All right, let's hear a test. No, I can still hear it. Like you're being. It's a
Yeah,
really
you need earphones or headphones.
yeah.
Okay, that's a problem. All right, so I'll probably have to postpone this until next time.
Okay, well, let's do that next time. There will be other occasions.
Okay,
Sure,
great.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sorry about that.
All right. Now, continuing. I'm just gonna wait for this to fix because
I just
okay,
muted him.
there he is. Okay, so continuing on the subject of white nationalism and the rise of white nationalism, I know, Luke, that you have a pretty good knowledge of World War II, and it's almost impossible to talk about these things rationally. However, I think that with the kind of reasoned person that we both are, we can get into, without dramatizing, acknowledging that part of the rise of white nationalism that's happening right now has some parallels in history. And I don't want to sound dramatic here. I don't want to say we're headed toward an Holocaust. But there's a lot of, in the writings of Adolf Hitler, for example, before he engaged into World War II, there are lots of parallel between the society, the Germany that he perceives, and some alt-right discourse today. Do you agree with this parallel?
Absolutely. For example, the last time we had this much, homosexual rights and pro-homosexual media propaganda just constantly barraging on society was the Weimar Republic. That was the last time we were that rah about homosexuality. And of course, any decent person is just going to be absolutely sickened and repelled by that degeneracy. Now, I, as a Jew, say, oh, why can't you be repelled by that degeneracy, in a nice and polite manner? Why do you have to be so mean like the Nazis? But when you have incredible degeneracy like we have throughout the West today, and like we had in the Weimar Republic, it's inevitable that there's going to be a tremendously strong backlash. And that backlash is not always going to be very nice and polite.
So you talk a lot about how Hitler was perceiving Germany at the time, when you, especially when your chat people on your streams that talk to you about it. And you say, essentially, Hitler was seeing a society where homosexuality was promoted. He was seeing the dismantling of the Germany that he wanted for his people. Compared to today, what would you say are the parallels? First, you name homosexuality. Do you see any leaders in the mainstream that are of that kind, that seeks to put priority over their people? Is there a mainstream voice for people who believe that the white race should have its own?
Well, there is not a mainstream voice as far as I'm aware. All the articulate spokesmen for white identity are very much, marginalized. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say Jared Taylor, Kevin McDonald, Richard Spencer, Mike Enoch, Andrew Anglin of the Daily Stormer. These are all articulate spokespeople for white interests. And of course, they are all, completely out of polite discourse. So, of course, maybe, white identity can just be squashed and destroyed. And, whites will, happily go along with being replaced. But I actually have more respect for the white race than that.
So I think that the Rebbe... Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, so we were talking before, Luke, before the show started. You said that you had watched the Spencer versus Sargon debate, and that you liked what Spencer was saying. May you tell us what in particular you liked about what he was saying? Because you're saying he's he's a good speaker and he's a good representation of the alt-right. So can you tell the audience what in particular you like what he was saying on that?
Yeah, well, the number one thing is that Richard Spencer wants his people to live. I mean, that's number one. That's more important than anything else. Do you want your people to live? Sargon, from all appearances, is completely indifferent to whether or not his people live. Like, Sargon is committed to these ideals of, constitutionalism or libertarianism, or whatever his ideals are. But Richard wants his people to live. So first of all, mad respect to someone like Richard, who will take all the obloquy and stand up for his people. Second, Richard is a very rational, thoughtful, intelligent, courteous person. He's not like rude. He's not making all those like nasty, idiotic remarks that Sargon was making. Richard stood up for himself, so I respect that. But Richard wasn't leading with the ad hominem attacks. Like after he'd absorbed about 20 of them, then he responded in kind. But Richard Spencer has a dream of a particular people with a particular living space. It's almost identical to the Zionist dream, only it's white Zionism. It's Zionism for white people. Jews have the Jewish state. And if you go back through the Jewish tradition, there has never been a major rabbi, meaning an Orthodox rabbi, who has held that Gentiles can be citizens in a Jewish Torah state. Like that is just, not the way the Jewish tradition has ever thought of the Holy Land. So too, Richard Spencer has identically the same vision for a Holy Land, so to speak, for his people. So mad respect. His vision is just like Torah. It's just like Theodore Herzl. It's just like Zionism, but it's for his people. And yeah, there are going to be some inevitable conflicts of interest there because I like living in the United States of America. And Spencer's dream is for a United States of America that is free of Jews. So I understand the conflicts of interest, but first of all comes respect.
But I understand what you're saying about like respect, and you can have someone who's like the nicest person in the world, but if he's polite, he's nice, he's kind, like I understand what you're saying, but if he wants all your people to leave America, like does it really matter how kind and polite he is?
Well, first of all, that's a utopian dream. Just as there are non-Jews in Israel, even though there is no major rabbi in Jewish history who says that non-Jews can ever be citizens of a Jewish state. Like that's the Jewish ideal, is that no non-Jew be a citizen of the Jewish state. That's an ideal. It may never be realized. And Richard Spencer has this ideal of a particular ethno-state, but it's very much an ideal. I don't expect that it will come anywhere close to fruition in our lifetime. And allowing people their ideals, I think we have to distinguish between what are someone's ideals and what is pragmatic reality and how are they going to act in pragmatic reality. Now, I don't know that Richard Spencer is not genocidal. He could be genocidal. Let's say he gets power and he commits genocide. But guess what? There is no one that we can know that they cannot be genocidal, because follow this. All victimologies, like all thinking about how your group has been a victim, inevitably leads to nationalism. And all nationalisms inevitably lead to the capacity for genocide. You cannot have nationalism of any stripe, Jewish, Gentile, white, black, Japanese, Chinese, without the willingness to kill vast numbers of people, if that is what is necessary for your people to survive. So I don't think that Richard Spencer and the white nationalists are inherently any more genocidal than Jewish nationalists or Japanese nationalists. Absolutely, nationalism of all stripes contains the capacity for genocide, but what puts it into action is particular circumstances. When you have a vicious life and death conflict of interest, that's what leads to genocide. But we can't just predict from someone's public positions and their ideal state whether or not they're genocidal.
So you describe a lot of ideas that come from the left, such as the support for homosexuals or for what you described as degenerate sexual behavior. Do you think there's many people who think that these ideas are being pushed as an agenda, not an agenda for the right of homosexual individuals, but as a political agenda? Some people even think that it is pushed by a Jewish conspiracy. Do you think that the current media environment and the very leftist media environment is part of a sort of Jewish conspiracy, if not intentional, at least in a convergence of interest?
Ouch. So, yeah, if we didn't use the word conspiracy, it would be easier to deal with.
Yeah, because conspiracy is often being mocked, and so let's just forget about conspiracy. Do you think that the people who control the media are making an agenda such that people reproduce less in America, such that the white people of America do not develop a sense of group identity?
I don't believe that is done. Most of what you said is done consciously. I don't believe that people in the media are saying, how can we diminish white cohesion? But they are, I think, primarily unconsciously, stigmatizing white identity, and they are, they're the net effect of what they're doing is to stigmatize white identity and to just say these are really bad people, and we have to look at, like, who are the most important, most influential people, for instance, who brought about gay marriage. Like, think about that. We've got gay marriage today. That would be absolutely unthinkable 30 years ago. Like, even liberals would have got, that is completely crazy. Like, how on earth do we have gay marriage? And I've got to be painfully honest here. There is no way that you would have gay marriage throughout the Western world right now without a concerted effort by Jews in the media, Jews in academia, Jews in popular culture, Jews occupying the high ground in cultural, political discussions. So even though gay marriage is completely contrary to Orthodox Judaism, and I'm an Orthodox Jew, we've got to be honest that the prime movers behind this gargantuan shift in morality from what 30 years ago would have been regarded as repellent by most people to now all right-thinking, all good-hearted people are pro-gay marriage. Like, if you can have such a gigantic sea change in moral attitudes, what brought that about? And I think you've got to answer that this could not have happened without the concerted action of elite Jews in media, academia, politics, fundraising, culture, even though gay marriage is, of course, completely contrary to every traditional, way of life, including, the traditional Jewish way of life.
All right. Okay, I'm going to challenge you on this. What's your problem with gay marriage?
Oh, so I could give you, like, rational, reasons, but I'll just be honest and say my primary problem is just, the gut. Like, if one's gut does not just react violently against the idea of marriage between two people of the same sex, then you've been, I think the person's just been so educated away from their gut that it's absolutely stunning.
You can't just say your gut feeling. I mean, we could say, like,
no, I wouldn't just say that. But I got to be honest. That's the prime.
Yeah, sure. But, like, also you say, in the past we would never accept this, but in the past they accepted a slavery to black people, which was an awful thing. I think throughout civilization, people, as a civilization, we evolve and become more accepting. Like, I don't. Okay, what other reasons do you have for disliking gay marriage?
It makes heterosexual men less likely to marry because it just skeeves them out. Now that marriage has gone gay, it's already difficult enough to get heterosexual men to settle down and marry unless they're traditional. So this just adds an additional factor of skeeving them out. And then anything that allows homosexuality and says it's okay encourages more of it. And how do homosexuals reproduce? They reproduce primarily by grooming. That's how people who could go either way in their orientation, that's how they're led into leading a gay life, is that they're groomed into it. I remember when I was a 14-year-old kid and a 16-year-old kid, I was just walking down the street, and I'm walking by, this guy's in his car and he's whacking off in his car. Okay, like, what the hell? And I walk on. Then he drives up to me and asks me if I want to ride. Another time I'm on this deserted road, and this, like, middle-aged guy, respectable looking, comes up to me and say, "Would you be interested in a blowjob?" Like, and then I had this good friend who was a professor at UCLA. He was like my best friend for years. Like, we were so close, and I was staying with him. And I was telling him about a date I'd had that night, And then I said goodnight to him. I was staying with him. I went to my room. And then 5 minutes later, this 70-year-old guy who I'd only ever known to have the most sterling moral credentials pads into my room, gets on his knees in front of me and asks me if I want a blowjob. I mean, like this kind of, grooming behavior, we have
three
to
examples
fight
there,
it.
right? On any of those examples, did you say yes?
No.
Exactly, that's my point. So like if you are gay and then someone offered you that, you'd be like, yeah, why not? I mean, but if you're not gay and someone asks you that, you're gonna probably say no. You know what I mean? Like, do you
Right,
think
but a
there's
lot of people are confused.
Hang on, so do you think, like, for example, there's a guy who's like 16 or 18 or something walking down the street, and someone drives up to him and goes, hey, you want a blowjob? And he's like, you know what, I've been into pussy my entire life, but now, you know what, this guy makes a compelling argument, maybe I will suck a dick.
I would say that, probably 70 to 80% of guys would not have any interest. But I think there's maybe like 10% of guys who could be vulnerable to go either way. And so I'm concerned about, the confused ones.
And just so you know, I've re-invited V because I think he would have something interesting to say. And in the absence of the Rebbe,
Sure.
V in the past has been taking a position on the existence of a people and the replacement of people. He seemed to be somewhat fine with it in his discussion with Millennial Woes, and I'd like to ask him. But just before we move to that, we have a super chat by LM, $5 US, who says, isn't it weird we mainstream gays, then 10 years later, children are taught to give blowjobs in school and that they are allowed to switch genders. So Luke, what you've been presenting as an image of homosexuality is at least a partly environmental modification that may encourage homosexuality in our society, which did not exist before. Typically, the left likes to assume that you are born homosexual, and it seems that your discourse challenges this. And I would say, yes, the left doesn't have much of a solid demonstration that you are born homosexual and that you cannot do anything about it. Is that your belief that part of the homosexual population is made homosexual through their life experience?
Yeah, I would say the overwhelming majority that their life experience has an important role to play. So I'm not going to say 100% their life experience, but I would say the overwhelming majority. And there's a therapist, Mark Smith, who said something that I agree with. He said every single patient of his or client of his that was homosexual, of the men, every single one of them had a lousy relationship with his father. And so if you don't have a relationship with your father, you will grow up eroticizing male attention. And that's what I believe is the primary cause of homosexuality.
Now, one of the main values we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes is the right to exist, the right of people to exist, to perpetuate their genes and their culture, and to continue existing. Now, this right, as Luke pointed out, is potentially in conflict with other rights, with the right to pleasure and liberty. And V, you've been talking to Millennial Woes, and you were talking about immigration. And you seem to be saying you were defending a merit-based position on immigration and economy and economical success. Would you say, and it seemed from this discussion, V, that you were okay with the fact that a country would take the best doctors and the most intelligent people it could find and have them join the country based on merit. And it seemed that you didn't care that much about the potential replacement of the genetic pool of your country. V, do you think that a country has the right to decide that its genetic pool is not to be replaced by immigrants?
Well, I'm completely against massive immigration unchecked, right? Like when you get millions of people from, let's say, the African nations or, the Middle East into your nation. Obviously, there's going to be social conflicts. Obviously, there's going to be problems coming from that, both ideologically, economically, and other reasons. I don't think race is the biggest concern, because I think a lot of people in the alt-right already point out that marriages between races are an exception and not the rule.
Yeah, but it seems that the race may be just a group identifier, from a group of people who say we keep our land for ourselves. Do you take issue with this conception of race where I don't care if the white race is successful, but I'm part of it? And as being part of it, I'm willing to join these people into a group identity that says we exist. And not only will we maintain the group identity with our cultural transmission to our children, but we will ensure our individual success and the individual success of our genes with this. If you allow what people call today moderate immigration, which is often enough to reach threshold where the competing population could replace you, you are not standing not only by your group interest, but also by your individual interest. And people in some countries, such as Canada, France, Sweden, are at the top of the most risky position in terms of being fully replaced by their immigration, by the people who are coming as immigrant.
I think if you have a merit-based immigration that's so large that it kind of starts replacing your main population and your main demographic, the problem is not with the immigration, that's just a symptom. The problem you need to ask is, why do you need to take people from the outside and you don't have enough people from the inside that would fit the positions that immigrants would fit? Because it's one thing to have like a small immigration, it's like, okay, we need like a couple more doctors, let's fill this gap. We need a couple, or this scientist is really smart and he wants to work for us. Like, for instance, the case of the scientist who was a Nobel Prize winner, and because of a sexist joke, he had to leave the United States and find a job in Japan. And the Japanese nation went, well, he's not Japanese, but he's a very smart individual. We can have him here, right? And this is like the way normal things are. But when you need to take people from the outside to a degree, which is like replacing your main population and it's affecting the ideology and the values of that nation, then the problem isn't with the immigration. The problem is, why is this happening? This is what you need to ask.
So V brings it back to values and culture being replaced, but it seems that he escapes the question about genes. Luke, do you stand more for the rights? Do you believe that it's only about maintaining your culture and maintaining your social system, or do you think people have an inherent right to defend the existence of their gene and the continuity of their lines of descent?
Yeah, what kind of cock doesn't care that whether or not his people lives? I mean, that is just so repellent. I just have such like contempt for someone who doesn't care whether or not his people live. And as far as like merit-based immigration, what you're doing then is you're importing a hostile elite. Why would you want to import a hostile elite? Why would you want to import Indian doctors, Indian coders? Like, why would you want to import people who are going to have a lot of negative feelings about you, and they're going to, screw you in ways that the 80 IQ person is never going to be able to do. Okay, the 80 IQ person can rape you, can kill you, can beat you up, but the 125 IQ person can, take your daughter, take your sister, can, just discriminate against you, kill your spirit. Like an 80 IQ crowd is never going to be able to organize a Holocaust. They're just not, smart enough to be able to, line you up and march you to the camps and gas you. But a 125 IQ crowd absolutely can, mount a Holocaust if they want to. So, culture is downstream from DNA. Even religion's downstream from DNA, let alone politics, let alone, a civil society. So importing people with different DNA, you're just importing division, you're importing tension, you're importing conflict, you're importing, varying degrees of civil war. Why on earth would you want to import civil war?
I can answer that. I think the civil war is not caused by race, it's caused by ideology. And I can give you an example in Romania, where most of the nation is white. However, the ideology here will then focus on something smaller than race. It will focus on ethnicity. And on Romania, we do have a significant amount of Hungarians who are causing civil conflicts that are now starting to become more and more extreme, to the point where you have Romanians being beaten in their own country. And they're starting to ask for independence. And you can see the same happening in Spain with the Catalonians. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's the genetics that are the reason, but it's the ideology which is going to have certain people take advantage and turn races against each other to the detriment of the nation. And you see the same happening with the far left that are taking advantage of ideology. And they're trying to push this nonsense of multiculturalism, which turns citizens one against each other to the detriment of the state.
But is it possible, V, that the multiculturalism ideology that you talk about was introduced as a result of some immigration policies and not just as an emergent idea? Is it possible that multiculturalism itself emerges in society as a response to interest from that society, dissociating themselves from the genetic success of its members?
Well, in Romania, it's not because of immigration. It's because the Hungarians were always here. And even if you would have like a society that's 100% white, 100% similar in ethnicity, you can have ideologies that take advantage of class. You can have ideologies that take advantage of religion. Any sort of difference between the citizens, you can have an ideologue and start, his own little version of how things should be. And they will blame all the problems of that nation on the aristocracy, on the bourgeoisie, on the non-Christians, or even if everyone is a Christian, you can have smaller denominations, and you can always like try to make this sort of infighting.
Gabriel Lopez, $20, says thumbs up for the King of Live Stream. Thank you so much, Gabriel. Luke, what is your position on multiculturalism in Western civilization?
Yeah, I think it's an absolute disaster. It's a death wish. It's like going into a blind alley and blowing some dude with AIDS. That's what, multiculturalism is. Like, why on earth would anyone want to do that? I'll compromise it a little bit. I don't seek like a 100% white state. I'm fine with 90%, 95%. I've met fantastic Chinese, doctors. My life has been enhanced by knowing Koreans. My life has been enhanced by knowing blacks. So I don't want complete purity. But overall, I don't want minorities to be in such numbers that they can create schisms and divisions and low-level civil wars in a country. And as far as these conflicts being caused by ideology, most people aren't smart enough to understand an ideology. Like, ideology is the luxury of people with IQs over 115 who have time on their hands. What people understand is race.
What's your ideal percentage of immigrants then?
Well, Japan, I think, is doing pretty well, being a 99% Japanese society. Now, whites, particularly of Northern European heritage, are not nearly as ethnocentric as either the Japanese or the Jews. So, they're a little more easygoing, more open. So somewhere from, I'm fine above 85%. Above 90%, I think that's a good ratio.
Garrett Green, $10 US, sends a question for Luke, which is very interesting. Why should I care about people just because we belong to the same ethnic group? I care about people who are intelligent and interesting and share some of my ideas and interests. What would you answer to this, Luke?
I think that's a great question. And it's true. We do tend to care more about people who share our interests or on similar level of education. But overall, the greatest predictor of how well people get along is genetic relatedness. Like a man and a woman who marry, where the genes are more disparate, the odds of the marriage lasting are considerably diminished. When the genes are more similar, without being a sister and brother, the marriage is going to last longer. We know that parents take better care of children who are theirs genetically than, step parents take care. So genetic relatedness doesn't resolve all these questions, but it is more powerful than any other prism through which we're viewing these questions.
Can I ask a question? If you say that ideology is not as important as genes, I disagree with it, because in Russia, for instance, class was used to divide people. But you have the example of North Korea, South Korea. One nation is one of the best in the world, and another nation is one of the worst in the world, comparable to nations in Africa. You have cannibalism, you have mass starvation. You have almost the same genetic level between these people, I assume, right? Because they're all Koreans. The geographic probably also similar. Yet one nation is in collapse and is one of the worst nations in the world, and one nation is one of the best in the world. How do you explain this from the prism of genetics?
Well, I'm not sure that North Koreans and South Koreans do have genetics that are identical. I think that there may be some significant differences. But I think you do raise a good question. Let's just say that the genetics is identical. Yeah, ideology counts for something. Like race isn't everything. Like I will say as a throwaway line, quoting from this 19th century Jewish novelist, race is everything, nothing else matters. But that is not literally true. Ideology is important. But you'll notice that even these poor North Koreans are capable of building intercontinental ballistic missiles that can, perhaps, rain down on any part of the United States. So they are a ferociously competent people. They just have a particular governing system where, there's not a lot of consumer goods or human rights.
I just want to point out they blew up one of their own cities with those missiles.
Yeah, they're not perfect. I mean, United States, when it was testing nuclear weapons, they used to test them next to Mormon neighborhoods, because the fallout would then go over the Mormon neighborhoods, and the Mormons were such great patriotic Americans, the military knew that they would never complain. So the Mormons died in the dozens from the nuclear fallout from our own incompetence, but because they were so patriotic, they didn't complain about it. Like try doing that with Jews, we'll complain.
Can we find out the difference between percentages? Like how much would you say genetics is important versus how much ideology is important? Because I gave you the example of Romania where you have Hungarians. There's another example of, and by the way, this is something interesting. We have a gypsy population in Romania, right? While they do have a significant increase in crime, and they live in poverty, but I think this is because of their culture. They follow a culture different to the country at large. You don't see them asking for independence. You don't see them trying to create this separatist movement like the Hungarians or the Catalonians are doing. And I think the reason is because they don't have talking heads that fuel the flames of difference. Because again, in my opinion, is that ideology, as long as it fuels the differences between people, which can be genetic, can be religious, can be ideological, can be class, there's when you have the conflict. You don't have the conflict if there aren't people doing that.
So
please let me answer that. Like,
go ahead.
Gypsy IQ is like 70. I mean, these people are on average about as intelligent as a sub-Saharan African. Like, there aren't a lot of gypsy neuroscientists. It's not culture. Their culture is a reflection of their really low IQ. And why do they don't want independence? Because they know they're stupid and they couldn't, run a functioning state on their own, and that they're a parasite on a host nation, and they only survive as a parasite. It's just like African Americans, generally speaking, don't want their own nation because they realize they couldn't maintain the infrastructure. Like if you ask, and one white teacher did this, ask, black kids, what if white people went away and just left you to your own devices? The black kids will tell you we'd be screwed because you need white people, you need high IQ people to maintain infrastructure.
I can debunk this. Let me just debunk this, and then we can answer your question, Jeff. In Africa, you have the state of Zimbabwe. If you look at their IQ, I believe you can go to Wikipedia and look like IQ rankings by nations. You'll see that Zimbabwe is not on the first 10. They started genocide against white farmers. If you look at South Africa, they're starting to do now. Most of the African nations have some sort of socialism, and they're also sparking the flames of ethnicity, but in order to kill whitey. They're trying to control the economy and do pretty much everything that makes a country be unsuccessful economically. And I remember you said earlier that people with the low IQ don't do genocide. If you need to study on the history of Africa, and you will change that opinion quite significantly.
Low IQ people can definitely do genocide. They just can't do it as efficiently as the Germans.
Sylvia, I just wanted to say this is an open speech platform, and so don't feel ashamed when you refer to the gypsy people to say we. because I heard you talk about them and they. It's okay. Most people on the chat know that V is a gypsy.
No, I'm not
what
a
I
gypsy.
want to
That's actually, I need to clarify this, right? Because some people
it's
actually
okay.
believe it. No, I understand it's an insult. It's insulting to call a Romanian a gypsy, right? And this is why this joke was attributed. But I want to clarify: genetically, I'm not a gypsy.
Oh,
Okay, so guys on the chat, V does not self-identify as a gypsy. V, I wanted to answer to your earlier question, which is about cultural inheritance and IDs versus genetics. What I suggested in my multi-Buddha video is that we can essentially make abstraction of the whole division that we have in our head between race and ethnicity, and ultimately, the question of heritability is whatever passes from one generation to the other. And the fact of human life is that part of it passes through DNA, part of it passes through brain that copy cultural information. The brains are created by DNA and they exchange information during the raising of a child. And so ultimately we can have a more holistic view and say, does it really matter if it comes from DNA? Ultimately, these are all information structures that pass on generation through generation, and they do so in a way that respects the classical definition of a replicator, as Richard Dawkins refers to them. They are copyable parts of information that transfer from parents to offspring, and so it doesn't really matter if Muslims are Muslims because they are educated as Muslim or because they have parts of their genetics are pre-adapted to record that information very well and to make them into good Muslims. Ultimately, what matters is when you see an individual, that individual carries information from previous generation in a way that predicts his behavior, his allegiance, and the way he conceives of the world.
I agree with this. I mean, the way I like to point it out is that I guess genetics does confine you to a certain degree. It's like playing a chess, but you have so many moves that at this point you can say that you have free will. But I'm not glad that you brought Muslims, because here's another interesting examples, right? You have countries like Iraq and Iran. If you look at them in the 80s and the 70s, when the ideology was different, you would not be able to tell the difference in those countries between a Western country and Iraq and Iran. And once you have the ideology that focused on religion, focused on the differences between people at the detriment of the state, you have the shitholes, which is Iraq and Iran today. And it's not even like, I wouldn't say it's even that far back, right? I mean, it's the same people who lived during the 70s and the 90s that are still alive today. And they notice like a huge difference in culture in their countries.
Hey, V, may I ask you something? V, are you? I know you're liberalist and all that. I've heard you and Sargon talking about this, but are you very pro-immigration? Because from what I hear, that the liberalist principles is that you guys don't look at race at all, right? Is that? Yeah. So.
Well, I can give you an example, right? If you were to hire another moderator for your channel, and let's say you have a black guy, a Jewish guy, and a white guy, who would you hire?
Whoever's the best.
Exactly. That's the liberalist position, right? You look at the individual and you hire the best person for the job. If time and time again it seems that the white person is best, I don't fucking care. Okay, I don't look at the percentages and say whites are overly represented in this position. Doesn't matter. The only question that matters is, can a black person apply and take the test to verify if he's the best for the position? If the answer is yes, then there is no discrimination.
But do you believe that if we bring in like a ton of immigrants and it starts displacing white people, like for example, if we bring in, let's say, 500,000, Muslims, for example, into one certain area, wouldn't that displace the current culture of what's going on? You know what I mean?
The correct way of handling immigration in the past, and I'm talking when things were more common sense. If someone wants to immigrate, let's say you need a scientist, and let's say the scientist happens to be a Muslim, right? You have like someone from the 70s in Iraq or whatever, and he's really good. You look at his CV, he shows that he is the most qualified person for the job. Then you also need to make sure that he takes a test in the history of your nation, that he understands the culture of your nation. And if he ever fucks up, if he, for instance, starts demanding Sharia law on the streets, you deport him right away. It still does not have the same.
But if we have, let's say, like, unemployment, right, which we do in Canada and America, and we're bringing in a ton of immigrants who eventually take up those jobs that could have been given to people who are qualified in those positions, who are currently living in America or Canada. Isn't this screwing over the people that we have currently in North America?
That's not meritocratic immigration, is it? Because you're basically refusing to take people from the inside, and you're taking people from the outside. Like what I would do is to be giving tax cuts to companies that hires people from the inside. I mean, that wouldn't be illiberal if you do something like that.
We have very interesting comments. So we have Garrett Green, $10 US, saying Gypsies and African Americans don't want their own nations because they have no definite territory to claim. Also, restore Rhodesia. And we have Dev James, 25, saying, base black person here. The conflict in South Africa and Zimbabwe is simply ethnocentric blacks fighting the odd groups, parenthesis whites. V is blue-pilled on race. Luke, I'd like to hear you about what V has been presenting here. It doesn't seem to me that the values that V is presenting are universal. For example, in local businesses, you have people who favor their family in employment. And it seems that part of life in Western civilization is about favoring your in-group against laws of market, but for rules of favoring your own genes and favoring your own family. Do you agree with what V has been presenting here?
No, if I hadn't shaved all my hair off, I'd be pulling it out as I listen to it. Like there are like so many whites who are so pathologically altruistic that they feel guilty preferring their own children to like some children in Africa or in China. Like pathological altruism is the flip side of the Northern Europeans, like openness to other cultures and kind of universal morality. But like even Orthodox Jews, like it's weird. Orthodox Jews, by and large, are more pro-white than even white people are. Like whites of Northern European heritage won't even take their own side in a fight. It's just so sick. But Greg Johnson, the editor of Countercurrents, and this is no philo-Semite, he said that probably 25% of Orthodox Jews, according to surveys, think that whites should, positively discriminate in favor of their own race in hiring, in neighborhoods, in schools, in all these things, while probably only 5% of whites are willing to discriminate because whites tend to look at people as individuals. Now, that's why, Anglo-Saxons have made the best countries, the high trust countries, at least when they were Anglo-Saxon countries, such as the United States of America. They played a big role in the development and creation of Canada, England, of course, and Australia and New Zealand, because they have this universal morality where there's not one different morality for how you treat the out-group as opposed to the in-group. So they make these wonderful countries, but then they allow in people who practice dual morality. Now, virtually everybody in the world practices dual morality except people of Northern European heritage. So dual morality means there's one moral standard for how you treat your in-group, and then there's a considerably more relaxed standard for how you treat out-groups. So it's not just Jews who practice dual morality, like Japanese and Chinese and virtually everyone. So there's a reason why the Anglo-Saxon countries are consistently the least corrupt countries in the world. Now, I'm not sure why Roman Catholics have not been able to create countries that are as low in corruption as the Anglo-Saxons. Maybe part of it's religion, part of it's ideology. I suspect most of it, of course, is genetic, because almost all predispositions, in politics and in the way that we bond with other people, have a large genetic component. So even our political reactions have a considerable biological component. So you'll find that identical twins raised separately will tend to have the same outlook on the world, the same type of politics, and the same sort of lifestyle choices, even though they had absolutely no environment in common, because genes are that powerful. And when it comes to IQ, like the major researchers say that IQ is like 80% genetic, and so you don't find any country in the world where blacks have higher IQs on average than East Asians or whites. Like in everywhere you go in the world where you have a sizable proportion to study, you'll find East Asians have the most family solidarity, the highest IQs of the three major races, the lowest rates of STDs, the longest lifespans. And then blacks will be on the other end of the spectrum. They'll have the most STDs, lowest IQ rates, the highest crime rates, lowest educational attainment, the lowest earnings. And then whites will be in between those two races, though much closer to the East Asians. This is a universal pattern. So if this was primarily ideological or free markets or religion, then you'd find a disruption to that pattern. But I can give you like 40 different life standards, and in every one of these 40 life standards, you'll find East Asians on one end, you'll find blacks on another end, and whites in the middle. They're tilted closer towards the East Asians.
May I?
So I want to answer to this question.
Sure. And then I want to bring something up to Luke about his past. That's very interesting. I believe that we could change it up a little bit. But yeah, V, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, so it's true that some nations are more tribalistic than others. We call this collectivism, like everyone is a cog in your machine and you need to promote from inside the family. Romania is one of these nations, and to the complete opposite, the United States is ranked as the most individual nation. The mentality that Andy Worski has, it's like I would hire the best person for the job. So the reason that a lot of nations are poor, and I'm actually doing a research on this in order to make a video, is that a lot of nations don't hire based on merit. In Romania, it is actually frowned upon if you hire based on merit. You need to hire people from your family, right? So I know a lot of people do it as well, but if, like, I, for instance, would have a company and I wouldn't hire my son, in Romania, other people would frown upon you. While in America, if you do that and it's found out, other people will use the saying, it's like, keep your family and business separate. The reason is that I had plenty of jobs in Romania, and there's always that guy who is hired there because he is the boss's son or he is the boss's nephew or some shit like that. And you can see him underperform. You can see him being a total dick and giving attitude to other people, and no one can do anything to him because he is the boss's son. Now, the problem with this is, imagine if I would be the best at making widgets, right? I'm the best in Romania at doing this. However, none in my family have a widgets making company. My skills, my contribution that I could bring to my nation is completely lost because I will never be in a position of making widgets. So I'll need to do something that my family has. Like maybe my father knows a baker. So now I need to learn how to bake because that's the only job opportunity I will do. So my skills, my merit is lost. And it's not just me, right? It's the bigger picture. There's thousands of people like me who would probably be excelling at certain activities that they would never perform in Romanian society because they don't have the connections in order to find the job and get in. Meanwhile, in other nations that work on meritocracy, as long as you're proving that you're the best at what you do, it doesn't matter if you have connection, or if it matters, it shouldn't, or it matters to a lesser degree than it does in Romania, right? And this is why Romania will always be a shithole, and other nations who think differently, like the United States, for instance, will always be on top of Romania, both in economy and in inventions.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what I want to actually bring up that I found interesting, Luke, could you tell everyone about what you used to do, where you used to look for scandals within the porn industry?
Yeah, I used to be known as the Matt Drudge of the porn industry. So I wrote about the porn industry from 1995 until 2007.
So like, can you tell people exactly what you would write about?
Well, I started out with a very high-minded history of sex in film book, and I eventually came out with that in 1999 called A History of X, 100 Years of Sex in Film. But in the process of researching and developing that book, I had thousands of pages of notes that I couldn't fit into the book. So at the end of 1997, I put all these notes online and then developed a website. And then at this time, it was something really weird and disturbing was going on in the pornography industry. About every month, a new girl was coming down with HIV. So I started posting updates on the front page of my website about what was going on. And it was kind of hard to figure it out because the porn industry did not want to make this news public because, you know, they live in fear of being shut down by the government. So I'm consistently reporting every month, you know, so-and-so's, you know, Trisha Devereaux tested HIV positive, and you know, some other girl is tested HIV positive, and we have this string of infections. And then I started doing some research, and I found that a prominent porn star by the name of Mark Wallace had previously been found out for manipulating or faking his HIV tests. And then I noticed that the girls who were testing HIV positive had unprotected anal sex scenes with Mark Wallace a few weeks before they came down, you know, being tested HIV positive. So I came out on my website and say that, you know, Mark Wallace is likely patient zero in this string of HIV infections, which was at least like a dozen names, many of them prominent porn stars. And the industry just went absolutely ballistic. You know, this is not true. You know, Luke is lying. He's just trying to get, you know, the industry shut down. And they want to prove that I'm lying. So they drag Mark in for a proper DNA PCR HIV test, which shows that, you know, he indeed does have HIV, that he indeed is likely the patient zero in this long string of HIV infections. And then this is now April of 1998. And I realized, wow, if the industry is this corrupt, it's this callous to the well-being of its own people. I mean, there's a threat not just to porn stars, but to, you know, society at large. You know, what's going on? You know, how many other lies are being told here? And so I kept writing on the industry for about another decade.
Interesting.
What's scary is that in California, they recently passed a law making it illegal, I believe, for doctors to check if people have HIV or not.
No, I think it's you don't have to tell people if you are positive.
Yeah, but if you go at a hospital, for instance, and a doctor wants to check you, he's not allowed to do that.
That's sickening.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. What happened is I think they changed the law. Let me find out.
So that
you can have sex without disclosing that you have HIV.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's that. It's you don't.
No, hold on. Knowingly exposing others to HIV will no longer be a felony, right?
Yes, yes.
And also apparently donating blood with HIV, doctors will not be able to test to see if it's HIV positive. No. Now, in civilized countries, if you have HIV, you can donate blood, but it can also only be given to another person who is already infected with HIV. So, like, for instance, if I have a brother who has HIV and, you know, he gets into a car crash or something like that, and he requires a blood transfusion, then even if I have HIV, I could transfuse it to him. And I think everyone on chat will agree that, yeah, that there's no problem with it.
I'm going to do a quick search on this while you're talking to confirm what you're saying, all right?
Yeah, just Google what I said. Basically, the problem with this is that they say that since HIV now is treatable and it's not, you can just treat the symptoms, but you can't cure it. And the treatment costs, I believe it's around $2,000 per month, right? So not everyone will be able to afford it. And if everyone gets infected with HIV, then obviously it will put a major strain on the system. But their argument is, since it's something that we can treat now, it should be a felony. It's like almost driving without the seatbelt level, right? It's like crossing a red light or something like that. It's just absurd. And it's the people who are in the LGBT community that are the activists, right? The LGBT activists who are pushing for this legislation. I even have the names of the senators and the people who have been pushing it. It is absolutely disgusting.
Personally, I believe that people should be forced to reveal it to any sexual partner or doctor if they have HIV. But to change the subject on a more positive sexual note, a super chat coming in. A brunette girl sends us $10. Thank you so much. And we have blog Ira Arteria who says for $10, "Hey Jeff, the Asian girl you fucked the other day, did she have horizontal pussy?" I will not reveal whether she had horizontal pussy. This is a detail of my personal life. I would say that her pussy was tight, and maybe someday, if someone asks me, I can reveal how tight is the Asian pussy. But for now, I will keep the secret with me. Now,
Okay,
Luke,
wait.
do you?
Just real fast. I just found an article here that says the headline is on factcheck.org. False headline on HIV blood donation. And then the full question is California governor to sign bill that allows HIV infected people to give blood. And it says that, that was false about the donating. However, it is true about the not having to tell a partner that you have HIV. So that
well, if it's false, then the LA Times are wrong, because I give you the
then.
article that I took it from, and it's from the LA Times.
Yeah,
and it
no,
says
it
the
says
measure
here,
also applies to those who give blood without telling the blood bank that they are HIV positive. So if the information is wrong, then the Los Angeles Times is the place that I got misinformed from.
Yeah, the bill, which is SB 239, is just to reduce penalties for knowingly exposing someone to HIV without telling them, and allowing HIV to donate their blood to others, but that's false. That was an exaggeration there. And there's a lot of websites that connect to this or explain this false exaggeration. Just to let you all know.
Fair enough.
All right, good. Luke, I was wondering about your position about the porn industry, because, of course, your articles may have had a negative impact on it, but do you morally object to the porn industry?
Yeah. I mean,
boo.
The internet awakens an anti-porn guy.
Down to brass tacks, the quality of your life equals the quality of your relationships with others. If you work in the porn industry in any way, you cease to be human to vast numbers of the population. You'll damage your relationship with friends, with family, with community. You become an isolated person. Yeah, you can have thousands of fans, but your real life relationships just get hammered. So it's deadly for the people who participate in it. And then for the people who use it, it's just like spreading the contagion into their life. It has a phenomenally damaging effect on many people, in their ability to have real relationships. Because what real relationship can compete with the offerings freely available on YouPorn?
How about just masturbation in general and closing your eyes and imagining porn?
That's a very good point, because really that's what porn is. It's just acted out masturbatory fantasies. So I think for many people, masturbation has a strongly negative effect. That it's an addictive spiral, and it becomes the highlight of their day. The 5-15 minutes that they're whacking off each day. So I think most people would be better off without masturbating. And I hate to sound religious here, but you're either going to pray or you're going to masturbate. If you do have both in your life, one of them's going to suffer. So eventually, if you're using the porn, you're going to give up prayer, and if you're using the prayer, you're going to give up porn.
So let's talk from a medical perspective, right? The pent-up sexual energy that women have is released once they have their period, once a month. But what about men, right? If you don't masturbate, I think is the popular term, the colloquial term, blue balls, right? Now, let's say you're a single man who couldn't find a girlfriend yet. Maybe we're talking about like a teenager, 16 years old or something like that. If he doesn't masturbate, how does he release the pent-up energy? Which, if he doesn't, he will become more aggressive, more emotional, more angry. Like we know the side effects that people call in.
You exercise, you devote yourself to higher causes. For me, just in my story is that I have not masturbated in 4.5 years. Like I self-identify as a sex addict. I had to completely cut it off, and within 2 weeks, I just experienced such a clarity and a strength of purpose with complete abstention from masturbation. And incidentally, the Talmud says that the penis is the one muscle that is a muscle that it grows. It becomes like you get more obsessed the more you play with it. So I have found that, like, prior to this cessation, I would think about sex 1, 2, 3, 4+ hours a day. Like, I'd go to the supermarket and I'd be checking out women and then combining them with like a pornographic fantasy that I had the night before. And since I've managed to go cold turkey and get some recovery, now I think about sex maybe 10 minutes a day, and my life is so immeasurably benefited from just letting go of all that sexual obsession.
Yeah. Have
Okay,
you
so
heard
so
of?
hold on a bit. First of
Well,
all,
wait, hang on real fast. I wanted to say, while I do agree that if you're doing it like 3 times a day, every day, it does affect your normal relationships, because it's hard to get hard when you're like trying to like have actual sex, because you're just jerking off constantly. But if you just control it, it's like anything. If you do it too much and abuse it too much, it will affect you. But if you can control it and do it every few days or once every now and then, it's fine. Because I know this of this one movement. I'm sure a lot of people, maybe you have heard of it. It's called NoFap, and it's guys who have like sex addictions, who watch way too much porn, and it actually affected them as an addiction, like a really negative addiction.
I want to touch this from a medical point,
Sure.
right? So what you described is the life. First of all, the penis is not a muscle. I need to get into this, right? So the book that you read, which compared the penis with the muscle, is not scientific. Secondly, you described the life of a healthy young male, thinking about sex like 3 or 4 times a day. This is what a teenager does. And as we go older, our testosterone levels start to drop, and then you start thinking about sex less and less. So what you're experiencing is the healthy life of an adult that happens to be a male. Now, of course, due to sex releasing endorphins and other chemicals in our brain, it can become very addictive. And like any addiction, it can cause problems. It's the difference between playing video games 4 hours a day and playing video games 16 hours a day. It's the difference between reading a book that you find interesting and the difference between just constantly reading romance novels one after another, never being found without the book in your hands. All addictions obviously can have problems. Porn can be addicted, but at the same time, I wouldn't go into the other extreme and say that men should never masturbate.
Well, I've never known anyone who quit masturbating and regretted it. Everyone I know who has gone NoFap has felt a greater sense of self-respect, greater sense of confidence, greater clarity. Like, colors are brighter, life is clearer, you're more serene. I don't know anyone who's quit it for 3 months and then, oh wow, I wasted 3 months of my life when I could have been rubbing one out every day.
I've actually done, like, I go on NoFap every now and then. That's something I've never really said. No, I'm serious. Like, I'll go like all right, okay, I've done it for a while now. I'll do a few weeks, and then I do agree with what you're saying. When I don't do it, I'll usually want to work out more, like all that type of. It's like, for example, people like who smoke weed an excessive amount. I used to do that. Now I'm like, I cut down about 80% recently, and life just feels more energetic and more, like, so sometimes it's okay to do it and indulge, but then I will jump back into NoFap for a week or so, just for whatever purpose, for whatever reason. I don't know.
Personally, I've went NoFap 10 years ago, but it was not because I'm against masturbation. It's because of the availability of women. Now, someone on the super chat, Speedy McPart, $5 US, says, seriously, fuck this guy. So it seems that people are attached to masturbation on the internet, Andy. Who would have known?
But look, I have a girlfriend. We have a regular sex life. It's good, but I still masturbate, like, she's at work. I'm like, I'll rub one out.
It's also tied to gender and testosterone levels, right? It's going to be unreasonable to expect a man with high testosterone levels not to masturbate if he's single. Than for it is to expect a woman, for instance, not to masturbate. Even women do it, obviously, but there are some women who have an easier time, right? So it will be a lot easier for certain women to not masturbate than it will be for certain men. And as a person who is aware of genetics and who understands biology, I don't think anyone will deny this.
I want to say one thing, Jeff. I think you'll find this funny. I was messaged by a few people. Medicare was the first one to bring it up. Apparently, Roosh V is doing was doing a stream or is still doing one. I think he's done now, but Laura Loomer was on, and Roosh V criticized me, saying the reason I went off on her was because I want to have sex with her and she turned me down.
Wow.
Fucking retardation! Oh my god!
It's time for admission, Andy.
No, I didn't even know who she was. I don't
Are
care
you saying
about
she's
her.
not beautiful?
Like, yeah, I don't think so. I'm not attracted to her. No.
No, I'm
But
not
Andy,
asking if
okay,
you're attracted to
let's
her. I'm
put it
saying,
this way.
do you think that she's ugly?
She's I guess she's okay. She's not horrible looking, but she's not attractive.
Okay, so you're ideologically opposed to her, and you still can find her okay, which tells me that sexually, you and her, I mean, there's something.
No, get out of here. Get the hell out of here.
Forget about her face, forget about everything, just her boobs.
I've never seen I only saw her on that fucking stream from the
What if
from
Andy's
that
an
cup.
ass man?
Amazing boobs on that stream, Andy.
What's that?
She had pretty amazing boobs on that stream.
If I'm gonna want to
What the
bang
fuck are these
someone, I'm gonna be
glasses, Andy? Do you
decently
even
nice to
see
them.
what's on the screen? Do you need better glasses?
If I'm gonna want to bang someone, if I was single, I'd be nice to them. I wouldn't ruin them online.
All right, I'm just kidding. Andy.
I know you are, but I'm still like.
I have a question for
Fucking
Andy,
Bruce
right?
V's an idiot.
So I can see if I got my point across. Do you think that you were masturbating more when you were a teenager than you are now, or not?
Oh yeah, it was bad.
It's normal behavior. This is what I'm trying to get my point. It's normal human activity. You shouldn't be ashamed. At the same time, you should be concerned if it takes over your life and if it becomes like a problem. But you shouldn't let people shame you for having a healthy male sexuality.
Would you ever, if you were single, would you ever date someone who was a porn star?
I did date a girl who was into doing like booby streaming.
Really?
Don't know if that counts, but I didn't know at the time. And when I found out, I was disgusted, and it did affect the relationship. We broke up 2 weeks after.
Yeah, I mean, like the jealousy would hurt me way too much, you know?
Yeah, I dated an ex-porn star, and we had, as you could imagine, fantastic sex. And the more sex we had, the more deeply I fell for her. Then the more deeply I fell for her, the more upset I got by her previous life as a porn star. And I was telling a very good friend about this, and one particular scene she'd done. And my friend replied, well, at least you know that she is not a racist.
No, but I understand your point. I understand Luke's point, that being a porn star affects your life. And it's obviously not a respectable profession, nor do I believe it should be. It's the same like being a stripper. But there are other professions who also affect your life. They have different levels of respect, obviously. Like, for instance, I don't know, being a neurosurgeon in Romania means you work 32 hours a day. You will not have time for a family. You will not have time for a relationship. This is why most are single. I don't know if this is like the biggest argument, right? Because, yeah, it does affect your personal life. And I think most porn stars are aware when they get into doing porn.
So Cody Alge, $5 US, comes and says, quitting porn has been the biggest improvement I've made in my life. It's like night and day. Porn is extremely degenerate and destructive to men. And we also have The Guardian, who, despite our factual disagreements, sends us $5 and says, here's $5 for JF for trolling the shit out of Andy Warski. Now, on the question of going out with girls in the porn industry, I would say follow the tip of my friend Coach Red Pill. Don't fuck crazy. I stand with Luke.
You think all
Also, I need to
porn stars are
clarify this,
crazy?
right? Because people in the chat are laughing, and rightfully so. When I say work 32 hours a day, I do mean you go to work at 6 a.m. and you come home the next day after 32 hours, right? This is when you go on watch. When you as a spinal surgeon, you have a lot of time when you're going to go on watch, like 4 or 5 days a month. And yeah, you're working for 32 hours. The moment you go in,
Are you
start
on
your
like
shift.
on those shifts where you do 32 hours and then like you have the next day or two off? Is like that?
Yeah, in Romania you don't, right? So you can imagine, like, there were articles in the newspapers with neurosurgeons complaining that they can't have a relationship anymore. They don't have a personal life. It's like they need to dedicate everything they have to this profession.
Actually, a big controversy was the video game Red Dead Redemption, they worked so hard on that there was many employees who had divorces for like the amount of hours that they worked. But again, with the porn industry, the other caveat to that is your girlfriend is coming home from like, oh fuck, what a rough day at work. Like I don't want to hear what do you mean rough day at work? She can't sit down. Hey babe, have a seat. No, I'm just gonna stand here. You're like, oh okay. I don't know. That's very strange. But like you were just saying, JF, about don't put your dick in crazy. Do you believe to be a porn star that you have to have something off with you?
It's like, I know that in principle, there could be a fictive world in which porn stars are not crazy and these women are very healthy mentally. But my experience, Andy, has told me otherwise. My experience has told me that when someone goes toward these professions, there's something wrong with them and they're going to ruin your life and kill you from the inside.
Like mentally.
I think every profession does that. I like every profession is going to affect your life in different degrees, one more than others. Like for instance, my YouTube career affects my life because I become very confrontational when it comes about politics. You know, if I sit at the table with my friends and one of them is pro EU, and I noticed this recently, like I will start arguing with them and cause a big fuss out of nothing. And it's something that I need to get into control. And I'm sure that with other professions, you will also have the same effect on your life.
Yeah, but we're talking. Yes, sure. Other professions will stress you out or whatever. Like, but we're talking about like with the porn industry to actually go out there and.
Yeah, it's not a healthy profession. I agree.
All your friends have seen your girlfriend get plowed. Like, you know.
Yeah,
how
but
are
I
you
have
going to like walk into a party like, oh, I've got this treasure on my arm, and you've all seen her plowed.
Yeah, I have a different question, Luke. You know, we're moving away from the industry and we're more into entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, if you will. Like if you have two teenagers that are having sex in their own bedroom, right? Their boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're recording it and they're uploading it on Pornhub. How would you feel about that?
I think it's really destructive because you never know the consequences of what you're doing. And if it gets out, your life is going to be considerably diminished. Like if that becomes known for the rest of your life, you know, in every sphere of life that you encounter, people will regard you as less than human, as
How about those
subhuman.
people? How about those people? I actually know a couple like this. They're able. I'm sorry, my camera was lagging. It's fucking annoying. I know a couple that they actually go to like, you know, those like sex clubs where you pretty much go in. They're comfortable with. All right, babe, I'll see you later. And they go and just like fuck people in these rooms or just like, I don't know exactly how it works, but or people I've known to go to bars together and they like split apart. They hit on other people and do whatever and then they meet up the next day. Hey, how you been? Like open relationships, essentially. How do you guys feel about those?
Yeah, I don't think it can work. I don't think you're generally speaking, you have to have a long-lasting relationship, you know, raise children, be a respected member of your community, have, you know, social ties, religious ties, ethnic ties, you know, professional ties, and you do that kind of life. Generally speaking, that kind of life is going to hack away at your, you know, upstanding reputation and your ability to connect with others, let alone raise kids. Like it's a really, you know, dangerous, selfish life.
How do you feel about people who clean the sewers? Like before the sewage industry was more advanced, like people who literally went into the sewer to clean the shit out of the city?
It wasn't prestigious, and who would want their son or daughter doing that kind of work? I mean, it was the type of work that was taken by people who couldn't do better.
Would you argue that the porn industry is prestigious? Like, would you consider
that?
No,
I think it's a perfect analogy. What you just said, the porn industry is sewage.
Wow.
I completely agree. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's sewage, but definitely just as low prestigious as the sewage industry.
Exactly. I agree.
And I would say that there's more than prestige here. The human brain is interested in developing attachment. And the whole system of the porn is essentially to simulate this attachment. And you have people being in situations where they recruit parts of their brain that normally were meant for love, for caring for their partner, and that are completely being exaggerated in a way that can be mentally damaging, in my view. Now we have messages from Australia. Diana Marsden gave $10. Thank you so much. And she also says, happy Australia Day, JF and Andy. And we have an hypothesis by MM who says for $10 Australian, hey, Luke, V mainly disagrees with you because he is a known anti-Semite. V can debate ideology versus genetics because he lives in a gypsy majority and has no real-life interaction with diversity.
Truer words have never been said.
It's just like white privilege argument. It's like you're white, therefore you can't talk about.
But it's true. I mean, for me, most of my life, I've not been exposed to minority at all. And I was a leftist, and I was very open to immigration. I was living in a village where there was one black person, and he was my friend. I came to know minorities when I went into universities and when I went to big cities. V, are you in contact with minorities regularly?
I lived in a gypsy majority neighborhood, and to this I can ask you if you have ever been beaten by people because you weren't religious. Beaten by white people because you didn't believe in the majority of the religion.
No.
Okay, so then would it be fair for me to say that you can't talk about religion at all, the benefits of it, or anything like that, just because you didn't experience religious bigotry? And
Oh, no, not at all. I think we can have theoretical positions. And I don't support the super chat, by the way, but not the idea in the super chat. But I was just wondering, because personally, my exposition to minorities has changed my view. I saw that they were more attached to their culture than I originally thought before I was in contact with them.
Well, wouldn't the solution then be like...
Real fast, sorry, V? I just want to thank Red Pill Loose for $50. Jesus Christ. And he just says, as a brown Canadian, let me say that this, without any biases, if it wasn't for European and Western civilizations, all countries would not be the way they are right now. Do you guys agree with this?
Yes, the West is best.
All right, V, go ahead. Sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, I do agree that the West is best, and I believe that is the Enlightenment values and the meritocracy that makes West best, because you have white nations like Romania, for instance, that don't have these principles at heart, and you can see how they're failing economically and culturally. Romania has no culture at this point. It's almost everything American culture. The songs we listen to are American. The movies we watch are American. The games we play are American. Romania almost has no culture de facto.
Interesting. Yeah. So I also wanted to say, so Luke, you are have stopped writing about the adult industry. Have you moved on?
Yeah.
From that?
I stopped in 2007.
Do you miss it? Do you miss writing about that?
Well, yeah, I part of me does. It was a rush. It was a thrill. Like, I love American football. I love the conflict and the tackling and the execution. And I used to cover the National Football League, so I loved that. And I also got a high and a contact high from covering the pornography industry. I mean, in some ways, these people were the most honest people you could meet. They would just say the most honest, forthright, just sharp insights into life. And I also learned fascinating thing in the pornography industry. Like, a lot of people in it that I thought were absolutely evil, not because of the pornography, but because of just evil things that's completely apart from pornography. But they would often understand me more sharply and clearly than I understood my life and so myself. So I realized from my time in the porn industry that people that you can think of as evil, they may have sharper insights into you and into the life than you do, and ability to see clearly has no relation to moral character, ethical behavior. There were just so many fascinating stories in the porn industry. There was constant drama and conflict, and the people were often just so heartbreakingly open and honest. I just loved the honesty that I encountered in the porn industry, and there was also a camaraderie. You'd go on set, and it was like going to shul. Like going to synagogue.
You went on set?
Yeah, all the time. And you would just feel really you'd really bond with people. And I wrote about this industry for 12 years. So I really got to know people through, marriages, divorces, children. They get into the industry, they retire, they come back, they leave, they come back, they get arrested, they go to jail, they come back. I knew people through this whole panoply of life, and they were often just really interesting people. And I just love talking to them.
May
I
I
have a
ask?
question for Luke.
Yeah.
I noticed that a lot of countries that where people can't masturbate or porn is banned, like the Middle East and certain theocracies, and you have India where a lot of people live together in the same household, so for them, having sexual relief is quite difficult. Or the Catholic Church. It's usually these places that for some reason have a incredibly high number of sexual offenses and sexual abuses. So like if you look at India and you see some of the rapes where it happens that the man just puts his fist into the woman's vagina and pulls her intestines out. I believe it was like something that I read was like really made the international news a couple of years ago. Would you say that maybe porn is a necessary evil? Because if people have an outlet to release this pent up energy, then they don't commit these sorts of heinous crimes.
Yeah, I'm open to, you make a very good point. I'm open to common sense, and I'm open to evidence. I'm absolutely convinced that for some people, porn is the equivalent of alcohol to an alcoholic. So for absolutely some people should have nothing to do with pornography because it will have a very deleterious effect on their life. For other people, you may be right. It may be, a preferable outlet to going out and raping people.
I've heard this hypothesis before, and I've been researching this at least to know if there were studies. And personally, I've never found studies that were confirming this kind of sexual attraction in reserve model of the brain where, people just have to release it. And if you don't release it in masturbation, it's going to end in rape. Personally, I've never found evidence that was convincing me of that. I believe that the human brain can be redirected toward other stuff, and the solution is probably not so much masturbation, but simply cultivating a culture that seeks for positive reinforcement on things that are totally not sexual. And people
it's just a hypothesis, JF, right? I mean, I don't know if anyone did a study on this. I hope someone is going to do it. But someone in the chat posted that rapes in Sweden are incredibly high, right? What does Sharia law says about masturbation? Who commits this rape? Isn't it interesting that it's from religious society? And again, Catholic Church,
because the chat, a lot of people didn't believe the story that you just said. I just found the article. Florida woman who was brutally violated had her intestines ripped out by her enraged boyfriend after she screamed the name of her ex-husband during sex. Also, by the way, if you're watching this stream, hit like. It helps support the show. Anyway, go ahead. So that's real.
I have 2 questions for Luke. First, it seems that the way you talk about the porn industry and how you were interested in it, it looks a lot like what you're doing currently with white nationalists and the alt-right. You're saying these were people perceived as evil, but I want to know them. Is it Luke Ford, the anthropologist, speaking? And in the end, you're just interested about the human beings behind the hateful perception that people have of them. And we also have a second question by Tsaris Russian, $20 US. Thank you so much. He says, can you expand a bit on Jewish and non-Jewish white relations?
Okay, so yes, the same anthropological thrill that I got from writing about, pornographers often regarded as the most evil people in the world, I also get from writing about the alt-right and interviewing members of the alt-right and getting to know them. I get that same thrill. It's just like I'm going into a forbidden world that everybody says is evil, and I'm able to put myself in the position of either the pornographer or the white nationalist. I'm able to see the world through his eyes, and it's like fascinating. It's like, oh, whoa, these people who everyone thinks is evil, I totally understand where they're coming from. So absolutely, 100%. And then the second question about Jewish versus white conflict. Well, different groups have different interests. And so the Jewish question tends to get really emotional reactions. So I think a great analogy for it is the eucalyptus question. Let's say you take eucalyptus saplings and you plant them into an environment where they are not native. Now, the environment may be so harsh, the eucalyptus saplings do not grow at all. And so in other environments, the eucalyptus saplings will grow, they will flourish, they will build. And eucalyptus secretes something that's like allopathic stuff that destroys other plant life in its immediate environment. So when you take this non-native vegetation, put it in a new environment, it can have destructive effects on the native environment. On the other hand, you can also manage your eucalyptus importation so that it is both, a benefit to its new environment, and it is, limited and controlled so it doesn't devastate the native forms of life. And it's the same with the Jews. Let's say you took, 5,000 Jews and moved them into Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure it'd be a good fit because Saudi Arabia is an Islamic state. If you've got an Islamic state or a Christian state or a state built around a particular religion, you probably don't want to move, Jews in there because it will diminish the intensity of the religiosity of that state. Also, if you have a state based upon, racial identity, then Jews are also not going to be a good fit for that sort of state. On the other hand, when in World War II, when you had the St. Louis taking a ship, taking Jews fleeing Europe for the United States, and they were refused entry to the United States. Well, the dictator head of the Dominican Republic said, bring the Jews here. I want the Jews. I want their entrepreneurial magic. Bring the Jews here. And the Jews on the St. Louis said, no, I want to go to the Dominican Republic. We'd rather go back to Europe. And so they went back to Europe and they got gassed. So in some Gentile countries, Jews are going to be a great fit. In other Gentile countries, there are going to be like many positive aspects of Jews and many deleterious aspects of Jews on the native population. So I think the question came from a Russian. So Jews, Russians have had a very long, painful history, which, let's just sum it up. It's basically the Jews hate the Russians and the Russians hate the Jews. Like the Russian Revolution was not a Russian revolution. It was a Jewish revolution. It was a non-Russian revolution that brought in communism to Russia. So Jews in Eastern Europe and Russia, they had a long history where basically they each hated each other, and they both had their rational reasons to hate each other. On the other hand, Jews in Western Europe, generally speaking, respected and liked their Gentile, fellow Englishmen, fellow French, Germans, Scandinavians. Like Jews do best in individualist societies, like the Scandinavian countries, the United States of America. Here, the Gentile says, if a Jew does something, say, dishonest, he doesn't say, oh, there's a Jew doing something dishonest. He just says, oh, that's Shlomo did something dishonest. But in corporate societies like Roman Catholic societies or China or Japan or perhaps Russia, they see the Jew doing something dishonest and they go, oh, the Jew is dishonest. You can't trust the Jew. So in individualist societies like group cohesion that Jews by and large tend to enjoy gives them a tremendous competitive advantage against the individualist strategy, the liberal strategy that V was talking about. Oh, we're all individuals. So if you've got a tribal group who can echo that individualist talk, oh, we're all individuals, and yet employ a group strategy, you're going to consistently outcompete the individuals.
I agree that tribal groups have an advantage in an individualist country, but when all of the country becomes collectivist, like hive-minded, everyone is a cog in a machine, then you have the problem that I talked about earlier. Like if I'm the best person at making widgets, if no one in my family has a widget factory, then I will not be able to use my skills. And then your country is going to actually start going downhill from there. While if I'm, for instance, a small group in an individualist country, and I can ask, is anyone of my family have any ties in making widgets in a company, and they can't hire me because no one has, then I can still apply, to the normal way. So I will have like an unfair advantage. And I think the correct solution is to try and advocate against this collective ideology rather than try to provide collective ideology for the whole nation. Because if there is a way for white people to stop being collectivist and to stop, seeing race as the most important thing ever, then the same way can be applied to other identities based on race. You can also apply it, for instance, to African nationals in America who are asking for this type of ideology. You can apply it to, I don't know, people like La Raza from Mexico It's like, no, you're here in America, you're going to act like a fucking American, you know, and there can be social pressure on them to stop trying to disturb the peaceful coexistence of American people with their bullshit ideology.
Yeah, Andy.
Yeah.
At this point, I've just received a phone call by someone who just yelled, "Shut it down."
Wait, are you being serious? No.
No.
Okay, God, the echo makes it sound real. But
I just want to say, someone in the chat said interesting. It's like you can't make groups stop being ecocentric, and on the same time, I hear that white people aren't ecocentric, right? So which one is it? Can you or can't you stop groups being ecocentric?
You can't increase a group's ethnocentrism. Like if the average Gentile, listened to the Daily Shower like 3 times a week, he would increase his in-group white identity, and with it, he would have increasingly number of negative and hostile reactions to non-whites, including Jews, blacks, Asians. So you can grow a group's ethnocentrism, and you can also heavily give incentives not to be ethnocentric. So in the West today, whites are faced with a media barrage that they shouldn't be ethnocentric, while the same media barrage says it's wonderful when Jews and blacks and Asians develop their ethnocentrism.
And that's the problem, isn't it, right? The problem isn't that white people are encouraged to decrease their ecocentrism. The problem is that it increases the ecocentrism of Jews and blacks. I think that is the issue, and that's what needs to be done. It needs to try. The media should decrease the ecocentrism of other nations rather than try to increase the one for whites, because at that point you're just going to have conflict within the nations. Other nations who are already strong, like for instance China, will take advantage of this type of thing, and it's also what the USSR was doing by the arms of the KGB. They would go to other nations and instill the friction in society, whether it was by ethnicity, religion, gay rights, or whatever. And once the nation started friction and arguing with each other and, having class conflict or race conflict or what have you, then it was a nation ripe for conquer. It was a nation that could be dominated economically. It was a nation that could be dominated culturally. And the Russians didn't have to lose many men in order to fight and gain control of that nation. I think you can listen to Yuri Bezmenov on YouTube. He is a KGB defector who defected from USSR into the United States, and he talks about these tactics. He talks about he calls it the demoralization of a nation. He talks about everything you just said. How the media, university professors are using these tactics in order to get civilians to fight one against each other, and it's what we're seeing today. I'm in no way okay with what the media is doing in the West.
Hey, Jewish identity is wonderful, but white identity, that's the most evil thing ever.
The correct response is like in the Marines, no one is black, no one is white, you're all green Marines. I don't know if they still use that, but that was the purpose, right? It's getting people together against a common goal. And I don't think...
I've seen a lot of response on that question in 4chan and in various forums after the Sargon-Spencer debate. People were ridiculizing the idea of, there's going to be propaganda affecting your country and threatening the existence of your nation, and your response to this will be, let's try to fight them on the field of IDs. Aren't you leading a non-fair fight when you are defending on the public space individualism against groups that are organized and that are going to gain benefit from the structure of your society and that are going to grow until they outcompete you? Isn't that a non-fair fight when you say we want to convince people? The same way the atheists were leading a non-fair fight against religion because they were faced with organized group that had genetic interest on their side, that had the good recipe for having people make babies. You are fighting a fight that cannot be won. Don't you recognize this?
Well, the SJWs fought the fight that could not be won, and they won. The reason that I would not advocate for censorship, for instance, because it would be an easy solution, right? Let's just censor everything, shut it down, use the oppressive power of the state to make sure that everyone is compliant. When you do this, you turn them into martyrs. You give other people a reason to sympathize with these groups. You act like you're afraid of what they have to say. So it's not even a solution. But not only that, it can be used against you. Once you created the ring of power, where you give the either groups or You basically like open the door for these tactics to be used. That moment, those tactics can also be used against you. People are going to look at those tactics. They'll see, oh, it's really effective, isn't it? And the next time your ideological opponent gets into power, they will use the exact same shit you've done to them onto you, and it's going to be a never-ending cycle.
Oh, that's wonderful. I want all the Gentiles to listen to this because this is so cool. If all the Gentiles think of themselves as individualists, and just take this kind of liberal individualist worldview, while the Jews, we can form alliances and do a group strategy. We're going to rule, while all the Gentiles are going, oh, I'm just an individual. It would be unfair if I, found something in common with my fellows. We're just all individuals. I love this. This is like...
Well, hold on, right? There's a difference between group strategy and collectivism. Collectivism is hive mind. It means that be a good feminist ally, right? You don't get to think for yourself. You don't get to speak out. You just shut the fuck up and do what the group tells you. And you notice this in Black Lives Matter, for instance. Any black person who has any ideas deviating from what Black Lives Matter says is going to be treated as an outcast, is going to be shunned by his family and friends. And I had a lot of people who were into Black Lives Matter in the beginning, and then when they started speaking out, they were thrown out. Group tactics, like having a group of people that are fighting for a common goal, but everyone is allowed to speak out and opinions are being shared, I think that's a lot more effective than a group that's led by only one ideology that's being dictated top down from a person. Because you need to trust that that person is right on everything, and that person has good intentions, and also that person is capable of leading the group. While a group that's being led by people who can speak for themselves and people who can decide is going to be more effective. And there's even a study I have on my channel.
But may I just say real quick?
Yeah.
May I just say real quick? Isn't that sort of like also if we're looking at like political groups? If you're a liberal, for example, and then you have one conservative viewpoint, right? A lot of liberals might be upset with you, or or if you're
but the thing is, like, the person is allowed to speak. If you're in a feminist or a social justice warrior Tumblr type of group, the moment you have any different opinion, you will be kicked out immediately. They will not allow you to speak. And in fact, it is completely discouraged to even ask questions.
Some very interesting reactions on the chat with this. Uberries, $10 US, says, V, only whites can be convinced to abandon their identity. Interracial philanthropy is almost entirely a white phenomenon. You can't culture your way out of this. And Jordy Johnny says, for £10, if the Jews had embraced individualism, they'd be extinct now. The same thing will happen to whites. Is it wrong for me to not want my people to die, V? You beta gypsy fuck.
See, this is a good question, like the idea of people to die. Before Romania, there were Dacians, and there was the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire conquered the Dacians, and they had offsprings, which turned into Romanians. In my blood, I have I have Roman blood, and I have Dacian blood. Does that mean that the Dacians have died out? Does that mean the Romans have died out? Or does it mean they had offsprings, and they just changed? And I am the result of that change.
Hey, JF, you are muted right now.
Oh, yeah, I am. So I was seeing other reactions. We have Old Metal saying, I have total Jewish ancestry and would be happy to answer this guy's question. And Garrett Greens makes a correction, $10 US. Thank you, Garrett. He says, Jews have never oppressed the West.
Well,
but hold on. What do you answer to that, JF, right? Because do you think that the Dacians have been and the Romans have been wiped out if I am the ancestor of them, and if in my genes I have both Roman and Dacian genes?
Oh no, evidently I see the world from the gene-centric perspective, and yes, we are combinations of what preceded us. For example, my genes are not totally French. Some of them are probably Native American. I see this as Native American genes saw a society install in their environment, and some of them have found a way to evacuate themselves into the remaining population and combine with the French genes to make viable organism. That's the way I see it. I don't think that cultural survival is good in and of itself. I think it's a tool for individuals. And it's not because it's a tool for individuals that it's not legitimate. Because everything in our society, the state of human civilization currently, is the formation of group. And there's almost nothing you can do in this world without being part of a group. Even a YouTuber who does his own videos is actually coordinating with a team of YouTube programmers who have made this space possible for him. So the nature of human civilization is collaborative and it is group based. And yes, when I become a YouTuber, I give up certain liberties for other. I enter in a contract with YouTube such that there are certain things I cannot do and there are certain things I can do. The problem with the individualist approach and the anti-collectivist approach that I've seen you and Sargon defend, it's that it's absolutely contrary to simple individual interests sometimes, because sometimes it can be in the interest of the individual to sacrifice some rights to join the group that will bring him more liberties, to access to more opportunities.
I agree with this, JF, but I don't think you understand the difference between collectivism and individualism. Like, groups can operate based on the individual interest and the collective interest. So for instance, from the individual interest, if you are having a group with Andy Worski, you'd both have to share your channels together and you'd both share your revenue together. Would you think that would be a better way of functioning your group? Because then, Andy Worski would also have to be interested in what type of content you upload on your channel, because your failure affects his income and the other way around. Would you prefer a group basically like the USSR, or would you prefer a group like the United States of America? Both are groups, both are people working together, but you can notice the startling differences because one of them is collectivist and one of them is individualist.
The answer, and that's what I take issue with from your philosophy and your presentation, the answer is sometimes it is in the benefit of individuals to join these kind of groups, to join these corporations that can do stuff together that they could not do alone. That's the nature of corporatism, of human civilization in its current state, and to deprive people of that or to make them feel guilty because they want to access this higher reward of joining groups, such as religious groups, by the way, is completely antithetical to everything that has ever worked in this civilization since we're monkeys.
I agree that there are, and I have stated on my channel many times that there are other advantages of working like a group. For instance, during wartime, the USSR communism is, for instance, the best ideology to win wars. I believe, even in Vietnam, the communists managed to beat the United States despite the differences in technology and whatnot. And, there are corporations that do act like collectivist corporations. For instance, Google is an example, like a corporation that's based on individualism. I'll go back to the widget example. The owner of the corporation only cares if you make good widgets, right? If you make good widgets, then you're fine. They will not fire you. In fact, if you make better widgets than everyone else, they will promote you. A collectivist corporation like Google would hire you for being an IT programmer, but they would also care how you raise your kids, how you vote. For instance, if you voted with Donald Trump, you're a problem, how you think. They will care about every single aspect of your life. And yes, I do think that these types of corporations, even if successful, they are harmful for the people who are working inside. Their happiness might be really low. And you are saying that I have no right to shame people because they, into organizing into corporations like Google. But the question is, wouldn't you also not have the right to shame me in advocating that corporations like Google are bad? And while I do believe they might be successful long term, I think that if the trend continues and if Google keeps using diversity hires and the politics that they're using right now is going to damage them in the long run.
First, I don't claim that no one has the right to shame people. Everyone can shame whoever they want. What I'm saying is this will not catch. It's too antithetical to everything that has ever worked. And you're taking examples such as Google and racial discrimination or ideological discrimination, which have bad press. But the reality is that there are many examples in the history of the US and of all successful countries on this planet of local businessmen hiring people of their faith because they thought it would be better, and hiring their little cousins and hiring people that they knew around them. This is what built America, and it's not a problem. Garrett Green, $5 US, says a private contract does not restrict liberty. I agree. I would simply say it restricts liberty, but in a consensual fashion. You agree to abandon some of your rights, such as the right of free disposal for 8 hours, and then the company in exchange will give you a certain amount of money in compensation. That's the nature of a contract. You can see it as not restricting liberty or as restricting liberty in a consensual fashion. Andy, you had something?
Yes.
But in that case, I just want to ask JF one more question.
All right, V. Okay. All right. Whatever you say will be the final thing, and then we're gonna do. I want to read one more super chat with a nice question, and then we'll do final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up the show for JF and I to do our post show. So V, if you could respond.
Yeah, fair enough. If you say that America was built on collectivism, or I hope I don't misrepresent it, but basically like people hiring from their own faith and from their own race and not based on meritocracy, because you can't do both. If you're hiring on faith, you will get faith. You're not going to get meritocracy. Why is the saying, don't mix family and business together, an American saying, which you can't find, I believe, anywhere else in the world?
You go right now in any little town of America in North Carolina, you just drive 2 hours away from any big center, and what you'll find is a community of people who meet on Sundays at the church and who hire each other and who support each other to go to the hospital to convince whatever woman they find there not to get an abortion. This is what's happening in America right now. And it's been happening for hundreds of years.
He says that he would hire on his show based on merit. Would you, for instance, would you say that's a bad thing, or do you think no, Andy Worski needs to hire based on his ideology and based on his relationships and family and so on?
I would say the case of the Warski Live show is exceptional because it's a high elite show that requires extremely high intelligence to be a co-host of. And so I believe that in his case, he is justified in taking a great intellectual like me. But I would say Andy also has other consideration in his mind. I mean, and let's get the example out of Andy. The people who hire people in the media, they have ideological compromises to make. They know that money is coming in from some way. And if my money is coming in from corporations, I want to please the corporation. And if the money is coming from religious people, I want to have a religious discourse. So no, the only consideration is not meritocracy. There is no such thing anyway as being the perfect news anchor. You can be a good news anchor for a particular view. And that's also what people in the media have to decide.
Yeah, but you're a person of a particular ideology, Andy is a person of a different ideology. So would you say that the show would be better if Andy were to replace you with someone else of his ideology in order to, I guess, please the subscribers more?
I say that my own engagement here on Warski Live can be viewed through two lenses. One, I'm a talented educator, but two, I have a certain ideological position that fits well within what Andy envisioned as the show, where Andy has a more leftist view, I have a more right-wing view. I complete him, and he thinks that makes a good show. So there are both ideological and meritocratic ground for hiring people.
I understand. Thanks for having me on, Andy.
It was a people were liking JF a lot. I like JF. We're completely different people. And I have a good a sense of what's entertaining and what is not entertaining, and that's why.
But my point is he is hired based on merit and not based on collectivism, which is what I strongly think that this is why the show is successful the way it is compared to something that you can also find on YouTube.
Sure, man. And like the last thing I want to read before final thoughts was Red Pill Loose threw $100. Jesus Christ, thank you so much. Earlier on, I did say something out of line, but in Canada right now, there is a huge demographic replacement that has taken place, which could change the culture of this country. It is very concerning due to the fact that they possess different IQ, what actions should be taken. Personally, I think that there should be a strong vetting system for immigrants. That's my personal opinion. And lastly, just real fast, FJ Cthulhu, $20. Handy wet bread pussy Horsky, talking about Laura Loomer. Anyway, final thoughts. V, since you were just chatting, do you want to do final thoughts before you leave?
Oh no, I'm just happy that you invited me.
Yeah,
If you ever want me again on your show, let me know.
Sure thing.
And I do have something for JF. You know, we had a little bit of disagreement on the Twitter. I hope that doesn't upset you in any way. It wasn't with mean intentions or anything like that.
It's very hard to get me upset.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Thanks for having me on, guys. Have a nice evening.
See you,
Bye
V.
bye.
All right. And Luke, man, out of everything that we talked about, it was very nice to meet you. Very interesting. While I disagree with a bunch of your opinions, I do appreciate your opinions, and you're very interesting. So any final thoughts, rather? Sorry.
Yeah, I just asked the listener, do you want to live? Do you want your people to live? And if you want your people to live, then you have to organize and take action. And I would prefer that you do that without genociding other groups. But I think every people, their first priority is, do we want to live? And then what do we need to do in order to live? We should live. We should want our people to live. Nothing else matters as much as that.
Excellent.
It was awesome having you. Thank you so much for coming, Luke.
Yeah, man, it was nice to meet you. I hope to have you on the future, buddy.
Great.
All
Thanks,
right.
man. Take care.
All right. See you later, dude. And
All right, indeed. That was an interesting discussion.
that was great. I had a blast there. Oh, here, you know what? I'm going to DM you the, what do you call it? The super chats
Yep.
here. Right. Oh, it won't let me because it's way too fucking long. Jesus. We could just do it the regular way. That was, yeah, I had a lot of fun. By the way, everyone who's watching, thank you for all the support. If you enjoyed, remember, hit like. That was great. I'm glad V came in and had his disagreements and his opinion. He's very open-minded with that, and he's very interesting. So V, thank you again for coming in. That was great that we had backup there, and hopefully we could have the Rebbe or the Rebbe, however you pronounce that.
The Rebbe.
Yeah, hopefully we could have him on very soon. Do you have any like thoughts on that? Like what we just talked about?
It's been my thought for many days now. In fact, perhaps many weeks. The liberalists like V are convinced of their definition of collectivism, but I'm not sure they are as logically consistent as they think they are when they invoke that term. I think that they're trying to create an enemy, collectivism, when in fact, everything in society, every single interaction we do with humans is partly collective. It has collective impacts. It has other humans interfering on your life. So I have a hard time getting with his definition where collectivism is bad, individualism is good. And he thinks that he has a definition to escape that critique, but I'm not perceiving it at all.
Excellent. And actually, before we go on to super chats, very interesting thing happened. Darren Meyer was going off on me again, just constantly over and over. So what I did was I opened up the halls of debate for her. I was like, you know what? I challenge you to a debate on my show or whatever. Let's do this, because she just won't stop. Her DM to me was like this long and blah blah blah. So she's been criticizing about the usual topics, right? And then she goes, no, I'm not going to be on your show. Are you fucking crazy? Blah, blah, blah. So what I did was I finally made like a Twitter video, and I watched her newest video where she cries and apologizes to non-binary people. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And then got mad at the people who were criticizing her for making that video, being like, this is a social justice warrior. This is what you're doing right now, right? And she's mad at them. But in my viewpoint, you've been doing these videos for 2 years. and then you make one video 180, and then you're surprised that your fans or viewers are like confused. This is like if a guy made a video about how he hated Xbox forever for 2 years. He's like, Xbox is so inferior, blah blah. And then 2 years later, he posts a video. You know what? I'm wrong about the Xbox. It's actually great. I don't. And everyone is like gonna be like, what the fuck is going on? And then you're like, oh, why are people angry? So I also in the video challenged her on that. Blair White tweeted, guys, hey Theron, you've been bashing Andy for 2 weeks. Do it on a neutral channel, please. Like, you keep bashing him, like, do it. This is like you're fucking but you can't come, like fucking do it. And then she just Theron DM me, you know, you're an asshole. I'm like, bitch, you've been criticizing me for 2 weeks. I could give my criticism about your new video, and then you're just a fucking asshole. God damn it. Come on.
I want to say I would love to see you and Theron exchange. And if she were to decide to come here on that platform, I would totally withdraw ideologically, and I'd be willing to look at the show, either not even being a co-host, or if she accepts me being here and handling the moderation. People think I'm very ideological, but the reality is I also have a love for well-done job, and I think that I could do a well-done job moderating it so that you both get a chance to speak. As for Theron and her comment about the SJWs, what she's discovering is the system of oppression that people in the right have been discovering the moment they said they were on the right. And so don't be surprised. There is a huge system of oppression that includes people finding false allegations about people and spreading them on the public space just because of their IDs.
Okay, wait. And Gareth just threw $10 to say, Andy, dear buddy, you're not being fair to Theron. Watch her recent live stream. True, she said she had expected backlash, but she hasn't shifted as far as you can make out. From her new video, that's not what I got at all. I mean, you could watch her new video. She's like, you know, she was being unfair to non-binaries, and if she's feeling the way. Okay, maybe I'm wrong about that, but her new video didn't explain it very well. Maybe she had to explain it better in the live stream, so I'll probably go ahead and watch that. But I think Sinatra Says and a few other people opened up their live streams for me to do this debate, and I guess she was disagreeing. And then Sinatra's like, then why the fuck do you keep... Look, if you're going to keep like bashing me and I opened you up to a debate... Like, let's fucking do it. If you want, like, here, that'd be great. Someone else's stream, fine. But yeah, I'll try one more time, one more DM, and then if it doesn't work out, then I'll just move on from that. But yeah, like, if you have a problem with me for 2 weeks, you keep criticizing me, let's fucking talk it out. Let's do this. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it would be exciting. As far as I know, you have no issue with transsexualism.
No, not at all.
So I don't think you would take issue with her personally. So what's the problem between you two?
She hates the fact that we do this show.
Oh, yeah, she disagrees with the platform.
Well, and my thing was, she thinks that we shouldn't do this show because we're giving a platform to bigotry and normalizing it. But then I could throw it right back in her face and go, there are people out there who think trans people is a mental illness, and putting them on a platform is normalizing trans. So would I be like, oh, there's a bunch of people here saying I shouldn't platform Theron because it normalizes mental illness? You know what I mean? That's what the thing about free speech is.
And I have to say, one thing I noticed in the recent weeks following what we've been doing is the left is now standing up a little more. You remember at the beginning, we had difficulties having leftists. Now we have someone like V, who to me has improved this discourse over the last 2 weeks. I thought that V was a pile of crap. Now I think he's more like at the starfish or sea cucumber level. I mean, personally, I appreciate his contribution, and I think he's getting better.
Yeah, he is definitely. In fact,
the only way to get this is to create that platform.
The Antifa person, Bronx blogger, wants to hop back on, and I was like, I might just toss him like $20 to buy a new microphone because I can't have that on the show. It was fucking brutal. Do you want to get the super chats?
Yeah, let's do this.
Beauty, you mind if I use the washroom? I've been holding in a raging piss. I drank 2 coffees and 2 glasses of water. All right, let's do this. And we got pound. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna have to copyright pound through some super chats. Sinatra stole it. Tonka stole it. Bunch of people are all saying pound through super chats now. Yo, guys, it's not.
Copyright is dying, Andy. We need to create constantly new
I'll be
stuff.
back. I'll be back as quick as possible.
All right, Max Friends, £2, Kick V, Cody Hodge. We must secure the existence of our people in a future for white children. Alexander Hermanson, 50 sec. Hey, Ray Swarsky, got any tips for a fellow stutterer? Heard you got your stutter down a lot by going through some sort of free speech therapy. I will be asking when he comes back. Meximan and Cheese, $5 US. Postkraut and Ducks Andy is my favorite. Keep up the zero fucks lifestyle, and VDEF is the sentence. You rock my duck. Big Dave K, $5 US. Hey, Andy, your live streams have been fantastic. Where has Chris been lately? I hope he's doing okay. Chris is doing great. I met him when I went to Ontario. He's in good shape, and he likes continuing to participate to the show. But I think that the job of a co-host was something he wasn't feeling comfortable for now. So he wanted to withdraw and do a little more back scene work, and that's what he's doing, and it's great. The Lucky Boy won, $5 Australian. Thank you so much. LM, $5 US. Luke Ford is a smart Jew who is taking a defense bargaining position. The Jew never does anything from a purely altruistic position. I don't know. Maybe you're right. But Montaigne, $5 US. Just popping in quick, be cool to see our based Spickman Lauer Wolf on your show. Recently doxxed and fired for his white nationalist activism. That sounds interesting. We'll see if that's possible. The Lucky Boy won, $5 Australian. Mad respects, brah. Mad respects to you, Lucky Boy. Concept Hot, $2 US. White Zion, the white people's holy land, hilarious. I think that Luke is a very intelligent man, and the way he phrased thing here was both funny and interesting intellectually. That was amazing. And someone asked, do you have any tips for a stutterer? He heard that you had gone to some free speech therapy.
Yeah, actually, it'd be interesting to do a show about that. I have a few people who stutter who want to be on. It might be an extra long stream if you know what I mean. But what I learned, there's actually two things you could do. All right. Well, actually, three things. The first thing, simple, is that stutterers are known to talk faster than anyone else, and that's why they stutter, because they're talking faster than they can process the word, the formation of their mouth. So slow it down about 40% of how you talk. Secondly, it's something called easy onsets. When you're saying a word, say it softer. So if you stutter on the words that have C a lot, like cat, if you could go cat, soften up the back of the tongue to not touch the top of your mouth or the roof of your mouth. Say cat, very softly. And the second tip is called it's a reset. So if you're stuttering on the word cat, don't fight it. Don't go cat. Go cat. Stop the word and use your easy onset. That's how I learned to do it. And then practice every day. Write sentences that have the most difficult words that you have, and practice every day for at least 10 minutes.
Great. So I've read all of these on the screen. I don't know if those were the early one or the late ones.
That's the early ones.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, I was hanging with Lauren Southern yesterday, and I was talking to her about her new series. Watch her new video. YouTube is oppressing it right now. It's really good, about the murders of white farmers in South Africa. Very interesting, and yeah, it's really fucking intense. So go ahead and check that out. All right, where were we?
The Lucky Boy, $2 Australian.
Actually, let me just, I'm going to switch the screens. Hang on. Let me just move this over. Right. Where were we? A Lucky Boy? $2.
Yep.
Hashtag Save Australia Day. Don't change the date. LM, $5. I'd like to know Luke's thoughts on the role of the Holocaust in forming modern day Jewish identity. We missed that one. Sorry about that. And then LM threw another $5. Isn't it weird we mainstream gays, then 10 years later, children are taught to give blowjobs in school and they are allowed to switch genders? Are they teaching kids the blowjobs at 10?
I mean, from the perspective of some religious people, essentially, yes, we're giving too much sex education.
All right. And then we got Decay, $5. Andy, I believe Luke is a convert. Ask him about that. Also, he was a journalist for the porn industry. Ask him about that. Yep.
Yep, he is a convert. I confirm.
Yeah. And Pop TV, what's up, buddy? $2. I call bullshit. Look at him. No one would blow him. Jesus Christ. Todd McKinley. Everyone, go check out Toad's channel. His newest video is incredible. New YouTuber, very underrated, and fucking, it's great. Hey, JF, if you want a good watch, go watch Toad McKinley's new video. It's fucking amazing. $5. Wait a minute. Is this another Australian shit poster?
They have a large bag, these Australian shit posters.
Yeah. The Lukey Boy, $5. 2 Aussies, 2 days, 2 kooks. Thanks, Andy. Agopian, $5. Fuck you for bringing V in. Now I'm out $5 and I have to keep listening. We love V. He's good for the opposing side, right? He puts in his 2 cents there. Gareth Green, did we read this one? No, we didn't. It was $20. I believe that homosexuality is primarily caused by a lack of a proper relationship with a parental figure of the same sex / gender. What do you think about that, JF?
I think it's a possibility. It's unfortunately being totally obfuscated by the left. They want you to believe that you're born gay. But it's like genetic determinism, and they don't even believe in that. So I think let's be reasonable here. It's probably a mix of both. We don't understand it. We don't know.
And I have to say, Gareth Green, man, he's a massive supporter of the show. Props to Gareth. You're awesome, dude. Misty Spillers, $5. Third wave feminism is turning guys gay. Might be a possibility, and also might be a possibility of why sex robots exist now. Striker Quiet, $2. You're obfuscating. That is not what he asked. Sorry, we missed that one. Leon Stubbs, £2. Ancient Greece, sex with young boys, common cunt. Continued for Leon Stubbs, $2 again. Arguments against it being a genetic. Please mention.
Oh, well, I mean, it's the fact that we don't know, but I'd like to see data comparing homosexuals today from 100 years ago. There's no data.
All right, LM, $5. This whole immigration discussion is retarded without factoring in the coming age of automation. AJK, 8D23YV, $5. We don't need anyone from the outside. We are capable people here. Striker Quiet, $5. Because of the dirt worlders who are already here, we wouldn't need more doctors, police, welfare without the people. V says we not deport. Ian Amburn, $20. Thanks for all the intellectual content. Questions. Are fans invited to into the Kilroy pub crawl? You and Sticks would be legit to meet. Cheers, mate. Yes, when I am there in Arizona, I will be tweeting where I'll be with Sticks and a few other YouTubers, actually, and we're going to be meeting some fans. It's going to be, or viewers, rather. It's going to be awesome. Gabriel Lopez, 20 R, thumbs up for the king of live streams. Gareth Green, $10. What the fuck makes you think that Indian doctors have negative opinions necessarily? America is based on ideas, not DNA, and DNA does not determine group identity and does not determine behavior. Any thoughts, JF?
I don't believe that. But it's a belief, but I'm pretty sure DNA determines behavior.
All right, Concept Hut, $2. Left and right seems like different races at times. Ben Morse, $10. Andy, you should prepared a canned message for every future guest with 1, headphones required, 2, instructions about fixing mic, including restarted Chrome and closing other browser tabs. Probably some idea.
I'm about to make a video about how to sound professional on YouTube.
Awesome idea. Gareth threw another $10. Why should I care about people just because we belong in the same ethnic group? I care about people who are intelligent and interesting and share some of my ideas and interests. Okay, thank you for your opinion there. And Gareth, I'll always thank you for the support. Pop TV, $2. Luke is really hung up on dudes blowing dudes. Jay Dyer, we should write his name down. He wants to have a debate on atheism versus theism. And a few people in the chat were like, yeah, have Jay on. So apparently he's known and he wants to do it. So yeah, Jay, I'm going to write your name down here and I will check you out on Twitter or whatever. All right. Koa, what's up, Koa? $5. What V said about ethnicities, Jesus Christ, Andy, is true, but it doesn't negate interracial problems. Gareth threw $10. Everyone has an ideology, even if they don't understand it. Everyone is motivated by their ideas, even if they haven't articulated them concisely. Gareth threw another $10. Jeez, Gareth, on a fucking roll, man. A unified Korea was one of the most unified and homogeneous countries in the world for centuries. Note, South Korea was authoritarian until the 80s. AJK threw $2. Commies kill smartest and cause big genetic damage. LM $2. LOL. Gypsies, like Jews, know they survive as parasites. Do you want to keep reading, dude?
All right. So we have Dev James, 25. We got your message earlier. Thank you. Mr. Batsu, $2 US. Deal with your repressed homosexuality. I don't agree that people talking on the public space about homosexuality on the public space are necessarily repressing homosexuality. Garrett Green, $10 US. Gypsy and African Americans. We've read this one. Thank you, Garrett. Black D Dragon, €5. That gypsy is lying. All right. LM, $2 US. Gypsy, our value brand. Tido Wales, $5 Australian. What are these weird noises V is making? Striker Quiet, $5 US. Call him a gypsy and you will be astonished at how he recoils, how injured he is, how he suddenly shrinks. I've been found out. That is a classical sentence that is normally not used with gypsy. Can we scroll?
Oh, yes, sir.
All right. Garrett Green, $10 US. Has it occurred to Mr. Ford that people of similar racial backgrounds typically have similar cultures, that is, worldviews, and people from different races have different implicit worldviews? I gave my comment on this, which is, let's consider everything that we package for our kids as something. It's inheritance rather than genes versus culture. We drop stuff on the next generation, and that's how we inherit stuff. Def James, 25. We got your message. Thank you so much. Gabriel Lopez, $10. V is now gypsy free. I'm removing my Patreon. This made it a little harder to hate him, which was great fun. Blog Hira Tarayara, $10. Hey JF, the Asian girl you fucked the other day, did she have horizontal pussy? I've revealed my response, and more to come. William Montberg, $5 US, given me one example of a historically multicultural society that hasn't collapsed or degraded into tyranny. Colin G. Rob, $5 US. The problem is that the offspring of intelligent immigrants of other races often return to the mean of intelligence, which is much lower. William Montberg, $5 US. There are more strawmen in these arguments than in all of Kansas. I'm from Kansas, by the way. All right.
Yeah, I'll read on here.
All right.
Kansas. Okay. A Vicious Snake, $5. Hey Andy, Franny just made a new episode of Decoded and her Comedy Central show was abruptly canceled. Are you and Chris going to jump on this one? Like I said, when she did announce that she was doing that show, I knew it would never air. It was not canceled. It was just not passed, and I knew she wouldn't do it. And no, I will not jump on this one. Honestly, I'm just bored of Francesca Ramsey, to be fully honest with you. Baked, and I've said enough about her, yeah. Baked Creations, 50 a sec. Luke is going to be a Sith Lord. Give in your anger, Luke. Fuck altruism. Use the Force and avenge your micro penis. Johann Leabert, 1488. AJF, do you think it's disgusting that Jews meddle in everyone's business?
I don't know if they do.
Yep.
They do advantage themselves, but I don't know that they try to impede in my life.
All right. Shabbles Shekels, $5. The Cali HIV laws were pushed by Scott Wiener. Echo, echo, echo. Weeb, $10. Kick V. Aiden, $2. JF, a bypass or conk?
I don't even know what these words mean.
Me either. Kawa, $2. He's right about masturbation. My penis is so chafed. Speedy McPork, $5. Seriously, fuck this guy. Divine Voice, 50 DKK. To Mr. Ford, why were Jews so prominent in communism? The attempted German Revolution of 1918. More than 80% of the leaders were Jews. Same with the USSR. Cody Ulsrich, $5. Quitting porn has been the biggest improvement I've made in my life. It's like night and day. Porn is extremely degenerate and destructive to men. Guardian, $5. Here's $5 for JF trolling the shit out of Andy Worski. That's when you were fucking with me. And thank you for the $10 from Diano Marsden. $10. Hey Luke, V mainly disagrees with you because he is known as. Oh yeah, you read that one. Cody Ulstrich, $2. You are a little cuck if you date a porn star. Diano Marsden, $10. Happy Australia Day. JF and Andy, happy Australia Day to you. Shabos Shekels, $5. I think I know where all porn stars go. They all become Volvo driving soccer moms. Scooby Doo, $5. JF, do Quebecois girls smell like poutine?
No, they don't.
Red Pill Loose, $50. We read that, and thank you very much for that large donation. We really appreciate it. Testrus Russian 180, $20. Can you expand a bit on the Jewish / non-Jewish white relations? I think we read that one, right?
Yep.
LM, $5. So V is arguing for ethical child porn now because that's where his logic leads. I don't think he did that.
He doesn't, but I agree with the logic. I agree
see.
that it leads to that.
All right. Divine Voice, 20 DKK. Why are there so many Jews in the porn industry? Miss Juju Pants, $5. Look at the lengths that V and the Brainlet goes to defend his disgusting porn habits. Fap less, lift more. Thank you for insulting me. Appreciate that. AJ Hekka, $5. More porn will save Swedish Goy. We was treason shit. The Guardian, $5. If the white nationalists understand that masturbation is destructive to people, shouldn't they be advocating for minorities to do it a lot? May Estonia TV, €2. V, you idiot. I have been chain fucking girls in Romania. The Guardian, The Guardian, $5. Eucalyptus trees spread by wildfires and burning things to the ground and are a health hazard. I do question the comparison that you are making. Darth Punjabi, $5. Islam says that masturbation leads to having pregnant hands in the afterlife. I don't think it does. I hope it doesn't. Jesus Christ, that's ridiculous.
I love how the myth recruits a kind of disgusting reaction.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Roundabout Red, $5. This is a contradiction. If Jews thrived in individualist nations, why do they also propagate the heavily collectivist ideology of communism? Do you want to keep reading from there?
All right, LM $2 US. V is fucking stupid. Blacks and browns don't care. Lauren Armstrong, $5 US. Read about the Frankfurt School and critical theory. It's a Jewish plan to institute Marxism by destabilizing the US. It's currently happening. Theodore McCarthy, $5 US. V is confusing collectivism, which provides a shared identity, with authoritarianism, which dictates people's behavior. I think that you've just put the words on the idea that I had in my mind. I was so confused by his use. I think you got it right. I think that's the problem. Untethered Tube, $5 US. If Luke is an archaeologist in both porn and alt-right, does that mean alt-right is ultimately harmful like porn, or porn is not harmful? No, I think it's just in the social perception of these phenomena that they are harmful. Uberry is $10. We've seen that message. Thank you so much. Jordy Johnny, $10. pound. If the Jews had embraced individualism, they'd be extinct now. We've read that. LM, $2 US. It's a never-ending cycle. Retard V. Old Metal, $20 US. I have total Jewish ancestry. We've read that one. Garrett Green, we've read also. Thank you so much for the regular donations. Puppet Perception, $5 US. For V, if we are going to decrease the tribalization, what will people be doing then? Decreasing. All right, we can scroll. And the Guardian, $5 US. Jeff, is there a gene in white people that make them susceptible to giving up their identity, not only from social justice, but also weeboo garage? It's a reasonable hypothesis, this idea that white people have been conquering territory at much furthest distance than black people in Africa. So you could think that there are some selection that's been going on in there, and in fact even further when they went to North America, such that the people selected were kind of too kind or too individualistic or too not enough for the nation, because the people who founded America, they are essentially those people who wanted to quit a monarchy. So maybe that's selected also for too much individualism, too much kindness, not enough group identity. And they might be eliminated because of that. AJK, 8D23YV, $5 US. Glad Luke is here and wish more Jews would follow his example. You can't ignore this movement and must engage if you want to moderate the blowback coming. Garrett Green, $5 US. We've read this one. Red Pilou, $100 Canadian. Thank you so much again.
Yeah,
we've read this one. FJ Tulu, $20 US. Handy Wet Bread Pussy Worski. I know we read it, but I wanted to reread it because I enjoy it.
I kind of lost where did we go? Where did we go? Oh,
the bread pussy stuff.
There it is. Here, I'll read a little bit.
All right.
Blockinariateria 1069. Andy, bring a Mercedes Carrera on sometimes. It would be pretty cool. She's a porn star / engineer, and she's
cool.
Yeah, apparently she's cool. I'll try and reach out. That'd be cool. Colin J Rob $2. Ma Widgets. Gareth Green $10. JF. There's a difference between voluntary associations and coercive ones. Individualism means you can choose what groups you belong to participate in, not that you don't belong to any.
Yeah, and so my point is many of white nationalists consider themselves individualistic, so they don't. V does not address this part of the alt-right.
All right, Lauren Armstrong $2. Let Luke talk. Fuck V's widgets. Gareth Green $10.
Also concerning Mercedes Carrera, I have to say something that people might not know. I once wrote a song with Mercedes Carrera's name in it.
Oh, there you go.
We can talk about that if she comes.
All right, Gareth Green $10. When will Sargon and JF debate? Ooh, that would be interesting. Gareth Green $5 again. A meritocracy is a collectivist in a concept. Guardian $5. JF, if you're using a small underdeveloped rural towns in NC, not sure what that is. What is that? NC?
North Carolina.
All right, cool. As proof that you can build a nation on collectivism, I don't think that's a good example.
US was built by these people.
All right, Gabriel Lopez 10R. What? Calcatry V?
Calcitrare.
That's kick V in Latin. That's kick V in Latin. We was Caesars and shit. LM $2. Merit is an unscientific, quantifiable concept.
Agreed.
Shabos Shekels $2. V went full V. Never go full V. Gareth Green $10. And I read that one about the Theron thing. I thank you for donating, and I made my point clear. Cloud9 Ninja $10. In group preference has worked out for my family business. We almost went bankrupt with 20 employees, then got rid of everyone, and it's just us. We are making money now. Sleeping Giant 77 $2. My H and E keys are going to get worn out, Andy. What word is he talking about? I don't know.
Maybe he was making he.
Oh, Gareth Green, $5. I could host you and Theron myself if you like. We'll see what's going on. Clifford Bates, 25 PLN. V and Sargon a definition really comes from Ayn Rand's disciple Leonardo Pinkoff's The Ominous Parable, Parallels. Okay. Pulxer, $5. I'd love to see Tommy Sotomayor on here. He's been on YouTube for years now. Ask the chat to explain who he is. Oh, I know who he is. Maybe we'll get him on sometime. Herpderp, 177666, $5. At this rate, V will make Anthropod by spring. Do you want to keep reading?
So Andre for $5 US. Please have Naked Ape on your show. I miss that monkey. Naked Ape's voice is triggering to me, so maybe we'll have him, but I will ask him to increase the bass in his microphone so that I don't go insane. Cloud9 Ninja, $5 Canadian. It's because we all care about the long-term goals versus I'm just here for my check. Like JF said, sometimes contracts are more consensually beneficial. Katera Harrigan, $10 US. My nickname is Kat. Funny hearing you say that a bunch. Love. Love to you too, Katera. Jeff Gossett, $5 US. Finally, a conversation that V did not ruin. I agree. That's my point. V is improving. Red Pill Loose, $50 Canadian. Thank you so much. Andy, you should do more with JF. At least he is more knowledgeable on true biology. I should learn more from him. Well, I'm happy you enjoyed. Yeah. Trillin Flossen, $2 US. Tell us of the Asian Formas anus. This is not a field of expertise of mine. Critical Strike, $2 US. Hey, Warski, what is your thoughts on the... Tom Burdown, 68.
I like him.
Oh, you wanted to share your thoughts? Yeah.
Just like him.
I like everyone too. Tom Donner, 68, $5 US. Laugh, no you leave. The day of the rake is coming.
Because of Canadian Day of the Leaf.
Garrett Green, $10 US. The American pioneers may have been really individualistic, but they were not too kind. America is great because it is not a nation. Read Rose Wilder Lane.
Let me read this one. Strix Varia, $5. Adam, could you please stop trying to sound like JF when you read off the super chats? Thanks. No problem. I'll definitely do that. That's all the super chats. That was a fucking-tastic show. I really had a lot of fun there. Let me just hang on. Let me just make sure I don't have the fucking link appearing here. I'll stop. There we go. Guys, I had a lot of fun. That was a fantastic show. JF, as usual, thank you very much. That was beautiful. Tomorrow, we've got, it's a distributing, is that the person?
The Distributus. And I'm telling you, Andy, the most intelligent YouTuber currently alive.
Oh.
I'm telling you that.
That's a big...
This guy knows what he's talking about.
So we were trying to find, possibly, for someone to debate him with. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I'm going to interact with him, so we're fine if it's me versus him. We do disagree on some things, but this guy, his predictions will be true in 50 years about YouTube, in 100 years. This guy sees everything.
Really?
This guy understands the current ideological state of the world. He is the most brilliant person I've heard.
Damn, that's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Guys,
all right.
As always, lots of fun. And we'll see you all on the next Warski Live.
Bye-bye.
Peace.